Chapter 10. And Jia was not afraid of death.
If he was afraid of death, it would have been impossible for him to enter the ice-condensing realm in his early 30s with ordinary aptitude.
The four realms of martial arts could only be entered by those who were not talented or courageous. And Jia's strength was enough to prove his indomitable passion. So when he saw his brother nailed to the tree by a spear, there was no fear in Jia's heart, only endless sorrow. He didn't even hear Li Tianlan's words. He had subconsciously rushed in the direction of his sworn brother. The killing intent in Li Tianlan's eyes did not diminish. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Jia's neck. The killing intent in his heart surged wildly. He attacked with all his strength. If this claw really fell on Jia, the defenseless Jia would not even have a chance to struggle before he died. Li Tianlan did not move. He stretched out one hand with a cold and violent look. A thin and weak electric arc suddenly lit up in the blink of an eye. Li Tianlan closed one hand and directly tore off Jia's collar from behind. Jia's body was dragged forward 6 or 7 meters by a sudden force. Electric arcs flashed in the air. With Jia as the center, the rainwater within a radius of more than 10 meters shot in all directions. The raindrops were like swords, hitting the surrounding trees. 7 or 8 trees of different thicknesses fell in response. When the raindrops hit the trees, there was a smell of burning charcoal in the air. In Li Tianlan's sight, Jia's body was wrapped in a strong force and was still moving rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the side of the silver spear dozens of meters away. The air was obviously distorted, and the electric arcs flashed like lightning. The rain in the air poured down like a waterfall. Through the woods and the rain, Li Tianlan vaguely saw a plump and beautiful figure suddenly appear in the air surrounded by electric arcs behind Jia beside the long silver spear dozens of meters away. One of her hands was still holding Jia's arm tightly. A cold and gloomy gaze fell directly on Li Tianlan's face. Li Tianlan took a step forward subconsciously with a cold expression. The demonic sharpness in his eyes almost pierced through the rain and went straight into the other's eyes. The pupils of the woman who suddenly appeared and saved Jia's life suddenly contracted. Among the people present, she was probably the only one who noticed a detail that was easily overlooked. In a situation where she had already displayed her terrifying strength, the moment the new student saw her, his subconscious reaction was not to retreat, but to advance. Behind this intense aggressiveness was an eternally burning desire to fight and a will to attack. Swift and domineering strength, an aura that would rather die than retreat, and a will that was as hard as steel. Such a person was almost flawless in martial arts. No flaws meant invincibility. Could it be that he had already touched the invincible realm? A freshman who seemed to have touched the invincible realm before entering the 4 realms of martial arts? The woman took a deep breath, and her plump chest rippled in the rain, forming a seductive arc. She ignored Li Tianlan and began to check the condition of the subordinate who was nailed to the tree trunk by the silver spear. "Sister Qin, quick, save Zhou Zhou." And Jia, who had been rescued from the brink of death, finally came to his senses and shouted excitedly. "Don't worry, he won't die." Qin said coldly and frowned slightly. Her seemingly delicate palm fell on the body of the silver spear, and she suddenly pulled out the silver spear that was nailed to Zhou Zhou's abdomen. A large amount of blood gushed out of Zhou Zhou's abdomen. The silver spearhead was strange. When it was suddenly pulled out, an equally strange wound was left on his abdomen. The spear blade was dripping with blood and seemed to have cut off his intestines. There was a flash of killing intent in Qin's eyes. Before she could speak, Jia had rushed over and sealed the penetrating wound on Zhou Zhou's abdomen with ice in his hands. "Take him to the hospital," Qin ordered in a cold voice, but her eyes became a little serious. The moment the long spear was in her hand, her palm suddenly sank. The silver spear, which looked light, actually weighed at least 50 kilograms. It could be seen that the freshman not far away was much more powerful than she had imagined. "I didn't let them go. I'll see who dares to move." A soft and deep voice came. At a distance of tens of meters and through the heavy rain, Li Tianlan's voice seemed to ring in their ears. It was elegant and calm, with extreme danger and strangeness. And Jia, who had planned to leave with Zhou Zhou, suddenly froze. Qin no longer concealed the killing intent and coldness in her tone. She said angrily, "Who do you think you are? How dare you be so domineering in front of me?" She raised her hand and suddenly exerted force. As the electric arc flashed, The silver spear that weighed more than 50 kilograms pierced through the night rain in the forest and rushed straight to Li Tianlan. And Jia quickly withdrew from the battlefield with his injured companion on his back. At the same time, Li Tianlan moved forward. Charge! In an instant, the raindrops falling from the sky all tilted toward Qin Ku with his charge. Li Tianlan's speed seemed to be faster than the silver spear. The distance of tens of meters was quickly shortened.
His body and his silver spear seemed to have become a straight line in an instant. The man and the spear were about to collide. In Qin Ku's quickly focused eyes, Li Tianlan leaned his body and grabbed the long spear that almost brushed past his shoulder. The spear with Qin Ku's power desperately pulled his body backward. The blue veins on Li Tianlan's arms bulged, and the joints all over his body crackled under the impact of the huge force. But his eyes were calm and strange, like the abyss. He didn't retreat. He didn't retreat even half a step. Li Tianlan, who was holding the long spear tightly, suddenly jumped up. The heavy rain fell. His body rose. The long spear, more than 2 meters long, turned in Li Tianlan's hand and suddenly formed a natural arc. The blood-stained spear blade came with a high whistling sound. The calmness and strangeness in Li Tianlan's eyes faded, leaving only complete madness. He was a madman. A madman who was already invincible in the same realm.
Qin Ku's mind was racing. Facing the long spear that was crazily chopping down, she just raised a white and slender palm. At the moment when the spear blade and the palm seemed to touch, Qin Ku suddenly flicked her fingers. Thunder suddenly sounded between heaven and earth.
In the woods in the heavy rain,
a bright electric light instantly bloomed between Qin Ku's fingers. The electric light was bright and dazzling, shooting straight into the sky. In an instant, the electric light seemed to be connected with the lightning between heaven and earth, piercing the ground from the sky. It was magnificent, running through heaven and earth, dazzling. Flicking thunder. The silver long spear was negligible in front of the electric light between Qin Ku's fingers, which seemed to connect heaven and earth. But the tip of the spear was still shaking wildly, desperately pressing down on Qin Ku's fingers. Qin Ku, who looked calm and cold, slightly raised her eyebrows and flicked her fingers again. The flesh and blood touched the spear blade, but the sound was like the sound of gold and iron colliding. In the harsh sound, Li Tianlan, who was still in the air, suddenly flew backward. His body hit a thick tree trunk, and he reached out to support himself on the trunk. With the help of the force, Li Tianlan's body rose again. The next second, he was already standing on a treetop that was shaking slightly with the wind and rain. His expression was still cold and condescending. The long spear, more than 2 meters long, was pointing diagonally at Qin Ku under the tree. Even though he was repelled by 2 flicks of the fingers, his body was still full of a kind of overwhelming aggressiveness and fighting intent. Thunder-shocking realm? Good move. Li Tianlan's body swayed with the treetop under his feet, but his arm holding the spear was terrifyingly stable. He narrowed his eyes and looked down at Qin Ku, chuckled, and said in a cold tone. As he spoke, his eyes, nostrils and mouth, even his ears began to bleed. Even his ears began to bleed. 7 orifices were bleeding. In the blink of an eye, Li Tianlan had been seriously injured. Qin Ku lowered her head slightly and calmly rubbed a drop of blood off her fingertip. A drop of blood was all Li Tianlan had achieved just now. You're not bad. You have such strength before entering martial arts. When you enter the thunder-shocking realm, I'm afraid you'll be invincible under the invincible realm. Qin Ku raised her head and looked at Li Tianlan, who was bleeding from 7 orifices, and said indifferently. She was telling the truth. With Li Tianlan's strength before entering the 4 realms of martial arts, if he really rushed to the thunder-shocking realm in time, all the people in the same realm as him would be a joke. The potential of this freshman was so amazing that it made her a little flustered. All under the martial arts were non-entities. The correct interpretation of this sentence should be that all under the chi-controlling realm were non-entities. And she was an expert of the thunder-shocking realm. The thunder-shocking realm, which was second only to the invincible realm, was a rare super high-end combat capability for all countries in the world. Not to mention dealing with a non-entity who had never entered martial arts. Even dealing with an expert of the ice-condensing realm or the fire-flaming realm was a piece of cake. But now, Li Tianlan, a freshman who had never entered martial arts, made her bleed tonight. What terrifying potential did he have? Although tonight's battle was not the same as a battle of life and death, and she didn't do her best for some special reasons, even so, Li Tianlan's potential was enough to frighten people. He might become the third expert of the invincible realm in the decade since the founding of the Sky Academy. That would be the glory of the entire Sky Academy. Thinking of this, Qin Ke's eyes softened a little. I'm sure. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Ke coldly and said in a gloomy tone, if I enter the thunder-shocking realm, you won't even last a minute under my hands. So this is the reason why you came to kill me tonight? In order to pose a greater threat to you, are you going to kill me in advance? Qin Ke frowned slightly. She finally realized that something was wrong. Everything tonight seemed to have been misunderstood by Li Tianlan into a big misunderstanding. For her, everything tonight was just a freshman test, but in Li Tianlan's mind, it seemed to have become a vendetta. No wonder he was so ruthless. If she hadn't come in time, neither Zhou nor Jia would have survived tonight. Who wants to kill you? Do you have any enemies outside? Thinking that it was a misunderstanding, Qin Ke suddenly felt that it was necessary for her to explain clearly. It was a joke to let Li Tianlan, a freshman with infinite potential, mistakenly think that a teacher of the Sky Academy wanted to kill him. Li Tianlan's eyes suddenly narrowed. He looked calm on the surface, but the branch under his feet shook slightly. He lowered his head and slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His movements were feminine, covering up the shock in his heart. I'm Qin Ke, the Deputy Director of the Teaching Office of the Sky Academy. Everything tonight is just a normal freshman test. I mean no harm. This is my work permit. It's up to you to believe it or not. Qin Ke glanced at Li Tianlan and said again. At the same time, she took out a certificate and threw it to Li Tianlan on the tree. Li Tianlan subconsciously took it and glanced at it. Suddenly, tens of thousands of horses galloped in his heart. It was not a vendetta caused by the exposure of his identity, but a so-called freshman test? So, I was seriously injured and so was Zhou just now, just because of this test? Li Tianlan asked, staring at Qin Ke with the certificate in his hand. You overreacted. Li Tianlan, you must understand what kind of place the Sky Academy is. Here, no force can bribe a teacher to kill his students. This is the rule. Qin Ke said coldly. Li Tianlan was silent. Qin Ke's words really caught him off guard, and he needed time to digest them. After a while, Li Tianlan slowly said, for anyone who may threaten my survival, the only thing I can do is to kill them at all costs. My life is very important, so I have to stay alive. Director Qin, please convey my apologies to Mr. Zhou for what happened tonight. They were wild and unruly, and they were very vigilant. Qin Ke directly came to these two conclusions. Until now, Li Tianlan still did not come down from the tree. Instead, he cautiously kept a distance from her, which showed that he did not fully trust her. Moreover, the explanation he gave was harsh enough. At least when Qin Ke heard it, she felt a little uncomfortable. Your life is important, but are the lives of the teachers of the Sky Academy not important? Qin Ke took another deep breath and said in a sarcastic tone. What does it have to do with me whether their lives are important or not? Li Tianlan lowered his eyes and said in a cold tone. Qin Ke flew into a rage, but she forced herself to restrain herself. Indeed, Li Tianlan did not know Zhou at all. Zhou's life and death had nothing to do with him, but was that all? Li Tianlan cherished his life so much. If his brothers and comrades around him were also in a life and death crisis, what choice would he make? Qin Ke took a deep look at Li Tianlan. This problem needed to be slowly observed in the next few years. Fortunately, there was still time. If there's nothing else, I should go back. Miss Qin, my bedroom is seriously damaged. If possible, I plan to apply for a new dormitory. Li Tianlan's tone became calm and gentle again. At this moment, he seemed to put on a harmless mask again. Make do with another room tonight, and I'll change it for you tomorrow. Qin Ke said in a cold tone. The accommodation in the Sky Academy was still very abundant, so it was naturally not a problem to change dormitories. Thank you. Li Tianlan thanked her with a smile and reached out. The long spear pointed at Qin Ke suddenly shrank into a metal tube more than 10 centimeters long and was put into his sleeve. Qin Ke's eyes moved. She was obviously a little curious about this exquisite but extremely heavy long spear. She asked casually, "What's the name of this spear?" "It's called Human Emperor." Li Tianlan glanced at Qin Ke and replied in a gentle tone. Human Emperor. Xianxia raised her eyebrows, and her eyes instantly became extremely strange. Xianxia raised her eyebrows, and the look in her eyes instantly became extremely strange. Li Tianlan asked in confusion. Do you know the 12 murderous weapons of the dark world? Do you know the 12 murderous weapons of the dark world? Xianxia's expression became more and more strange. It had to be said that she was indeed an extremely beautiful woman. It was just that her usual expression was too cold. When she slightly revealed some human-like expression, it immediately made her charm rise by a few levels. However, after getting to know Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan already had a detached mentality that treated other beauties as fleeting clouds. His heart was as still as water. He shook his head casually and said, "Never heard of her." About 15 years ago, Night Spirit, a super force in the dark world, went east to Jianghu State in order to snatch a top-secret blueprint of a military project. One of the two dominators of Night Spirit, Heaven Heart, an invincible realm expert, personally took action and started a massacre at the border of Jianghu State. A patriarch of a top noble family in Jianghu State went to fight. In the end, he killed Xianxia, an invincible realm expert of Night Spirit, with one shot in the sky 20,000 meters away. Xianxia was smashed to pieces, and no bones were left. Do you know what weapon that patriarch used? Xianxia asked slowly. Her tone was still cold and indifferent, yet her eyes were suffused with the color of fervor, and it was the adoration and respect towards absolute experts. Didn't you say it yourself? Shoot them with a gun. Li Tianlan was also shocked, but his tone was still steady. Yes, he used a gun, but it was different from your long spear. He used a sniper rifle. Coincidentally, that gun is also called Human Emperor, the first of the 12 murderous weapons of the dark world. Such an outstanding person and such a famous gun are worthy of the name Human Emperor. As for you and your weapon... Xianxia paused and did not continue. Li Tianlan also fell silent, but the Human Emperor that he had put into his sleeve fell into his palm again, and he held it tightly. The heavy rain in the woods continued, and thunder rolled. Pale lightning tore through the sky. Chapter 11. As the official opening time approached, the campus of the Sky Academy gradually became lively. In fact, it was relatively lively. The campus of the Sky Academy was extremely large. It was dozens of kilometers in length from east to west and width from south to north. There were less than 3,000 teachers and students scattered on the vast land. It was not an exaggeration to say that the land was vast but sparsely populated. In the absence of unified action, the campus seemed empty most of the time. Fortunately, the dormitories in the school were relatively dense. All the teachers and students were gathered in one area. As more and more freshmen entered the school, the endless stream of freshmen directly added a lot of noisy atmosphere to the school at mealtime every day. This was almost a scene that Li Tianlan had never seen since he was a child. Except for seeing so many people at the station when he first arrived in Huiting, this was the first time he had come into contact with such an environment. Different from the boring and numb border, this was facing the sea where spring was warm and flowers were blooming. Here the sun was warm and the breeze was blowing. Here the grass was like a carpet, the flowers were in full bloom, the smiles were bright, and the youth was flying. The competitive environment inside the Sky Academy was extremely cruel. But for Li Tianlan, everything here was like heaven. After a lifetime, peace and joy filled his heart most. It was the 6th day of school. For nearly a week, Li Tianlan would take a certain amount of time to go out and have a look every day. As a newcomer, he almost instinctively wanted to know more about this legendary special warfare school. Subconsciously, he liked the feeling of controlling everything and knowing everything. He didn't know what it would do for his future studies, but at least it wouldn't do any harm. Li Tianlan was meticulous and cautious. He had an almost pathological pursuit of details since he was a child. The only thing that Li Tianlan regretted was that he still didn't see his other two roommates on the day before the official opening of the school. The dormitory that Xianxia changed for him was still a structure of 3 bedrooms and 1 living room, but it was larger and more luxurious than the previous dormitory. Not only this dormitory, but in the dormitory area, the building where Li Tianlan lived seemed to be more glamorous than other residential buildings. Li Tianlan paid special attention to it. So far, less than 24 hours before the official opening of the school, he was the only resident in this building. This also made Li Tianlan a little annoyed. It was not because he was lonely, but from the time when the freshmen entered this building,
He could clearly see that these freshmen who had not yet arrived were different from other people. At least their arrogance was extraordinary. How many of these students were easy to talk to? When this group of people gathered together, the whole building would probably be quite lively in the future. It was obvious that Jianghu was up to no good by arranging him here. The woman seemed to hate him. Standing in front of the window, Li Tianlan sorted out everything that had happened in the 6 days since he came to the Sky Academy. He shook his head helplessly and walked out of the bedroom, ready to go out for dinner. A familiar yet unfamiliar voice suddenly sounded at the door. Then there was the sound of the door being unlocked. Li Tianlan, who had just walked out of the bedroom, was stunned for a moment. In his sight, the security door of the dormitory opened, and a tall figure walked into the dormitory. That's right, it was a figure, or rather, a strand. Because this person was too skinny. He was at least 185 meters tall, but he didn't seem to have much meat on his body. His tall figure stood there, but he didn't look intimidating at all. Instead, he looked like a bamboo pole, giving people a feeling of weakness. He was dressed in black sportswear, which looked like an empty robe. A dark brown wooden box was slung on his back, but his back was so narrow that the long box was shaking. The young man with long hair and a somewhat decadent temperament was stunned when he saw Li Tianlan. Then, a smile appeared on his white and thin face. He took the initiative to reach out his hand and said enthusiastically, "Hello, I'm Li Batian." "I'm Li Tianlan." Li Tianlan reached out his hand and shook hands with him. The man's palm was the same as his body, full of bones. "Li Tianlan? Oh, we're from the same family, brother. We have 2 characters in our names. To tell you the truth, at the beginning of this year, an old Taoist went to my house as a guest and said that I would meet a noble person around the Qingming festival." Damn, the Qingming festival, meet a noble person? At that time, I almost pulled out my sword and killed the whole family of that old bastard. Isn't that a curse? I believe it when I see you. Let's not talk about noble person first. Just based on your name, I know that we're destined to meet. I knew we were fated to meet. Hey, should I change my name? My name is Li Tianbai. If we go out like this, will people think that we're brothers? Forget it. The name Li Tianbai is too ugly. How domineering is Li Batian? What do you think? How about you change your name to Li Lantian? That's better. Li Batian grabbed Li Tianlan's hand and shook it hard. The smile on his thin face was bright and he talked non-stop. Li Tianlan's expression was stiff. It was the first time in his life that he had seen such a super familiar person. It was quite an eye-opener. However, this kind of familiar character was much easier to accept than the arrogant character he had expected. The corner of his mouth moved, and he laughed dryly. There's no need to change my name. Even if I don't change my name, we're destined to meet. Besides, Li Tianlan hesitated, but in the end, he couldn't turn a blind eye to such an obvious point. He directly complained, "Besides, if I change my name to Li Lantian, what kind of heaven will you worship?" Well, that makes sense. Li Batian pondered for a while and nodded in agreement. If you change your name, I'll become a joke. Where's my room? Li Tianlan could barely keep up with this kind of jumping thinking. He pointed to the other 2 rooms and said, "There are only the 2 of us here now. You can choose any of the other 2 rooms." Li Batian was really casual. He dragged his body, which was estimated to be about 50 kilograms at most, into the room closest to him. He put the long box on his back on the bed and threw away the weekly diary in his hand. Without even looking at the student code of conduct on the bed, he smiled casually and said, "Brother, want to have a meal together? When I came here, I saw that there are many restaurants in this shabby place. You came earlier than me. Do you have any good places to recommend? I'll treat you. If you want to go to a restaurant after school starts tomorrow, you'll have to pay credits. I won't be able to afford it then. I'll go to the nearest one." Li Tianlan's tone was calm. He was not particular about food. As long as there was meat, he was satisfied. The food in the cafeteria might be ordinary to others, but it was truly delicious to him. You don't know how to live. Li Batian rolled his eyes and took out his mobile phone. Wait a minute. I'll grab a girl and let's have a good meal together. I'll ask her to book a table first. 3 people, right? Do you have any friends? Li Tianlan suddenly thought of Yu Qingyan. Although he was related to Qin Weibai and Yu Donglai,
He was not very familiar with Yu Qingyan. In the past 6 days, they only had a meal together. Now he should ask her to come. However, looking at the smiling bamboo in front of him, Li Tianlan was a little hesitant. If he asked Yu Qingyan to come, would he be like a lamb walking into a tiger's mouth? He shook his head subconsciously. Before he could speak, the burglary-proof door of the dormitory rang again. A young man, who looked about 22 or 23 years old, walked into the dormitory with a big bag. Compared with Li Beitian, who was like a bamboo, his new roommate at least looked more reliable. He was of medium build, short hair, thick eyebrows, big eyes, and bronzed skin, looking very masculine. He was not handsome, but he was angular and had a very tough aura. What was more different from Li Tianlan and Li Beitian was that he wore a dark green military uniform. His body was straight, and he stood there with a strong and iron-blooded aura. Li Tianlan nodded at him and took the initiative to say, "Hello, I'm Li Tianlan."
The man in the military uniform nodded, his face cold.
Hearing the voice, Li Beitian walked out of his room and looked at his new roommate. He raised his eyebrows slightly and his eyes stopped at the badge on his shoulder.
He smiled and said, "Not bad, brother.
You're already a major at such a young age? You don't look older than me. Which army are you from?" "Border Control Corps. Ning Chencheng."
The major was a man of few words.
When he mentioned the Border Control Corps, his words were full of clear pride. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed slightly. He lived at the border all year round and did not know much about the outside world.
However, he knew something about the Border Control Corps.
The full name of the Border Control Corps was the Border Praetorian Corps of Jianghu State. It was responsible for setting up defenses and guarding the borders of the entire Jianghu State.
It had a total of nearly 600,000 soldiers and could be said to be the most elite large army in the entire Jianghu State.
Its combat effectiveness was well-deserved. Once a war broke out, the entire Border Control Corps would be the front line of the entire Jianghu State. The camp where he grew up was near the border between Jianghu State and Annan State. There was also a Border Control Corps stationed dozens of kilometers away from the camp.
TSK. TSK.
Impressive. A major of the Border Control Corps. You're very valuable. Which army are you from, brother? Li Beitian exclaimed and moved closer to Ning Chencheng, laughing. Thunderbolt Battalion. Deputy Battalion Commander of the Guards Camp. Ning Chencheng's tone was indifferent, but his pride was becoming more and more obvious. Someone close to Marshal Dongqing? Li Beitian froze for a moment.
His mischievous expression finally disappeared and he asked solemnly.
The Thunderbolt Battalion of the Border Control Corps was the army directly under the command of Marshal Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Control Corps. The guards camp of the Thunderbolt Battalion was responsible for the safety of the senior officers of the Thunderbolt Battalion. Ning Chencheng was able to become the deputy battalion commander at such a young age. He was definitely Marshal Dongqing's confidant and also the young talent that the Marshal of Jianghu State valued the most. The total size of the Border Control Corps was nearly 600,000 people, and its combat force was nearly 550,000. They were stationed in the provinces at the border of Jianghu State and other countries. Its internal structure was complicated and it held great power. It was known as the Small Military Department.
How could a young man who was favored by the commander of the Border Control Corps be ordinary?
Yes. Ning Chencheng glanced at Li Beitian and his tone became more and more indifferent. Li Beitian raised his eyebrows slightly and seemed to be deep in thought. He muttered to himself, Border Control Corps, Ning Chencheng, Ning Chencheng. This name sounds familiar. Ning Chencheng raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Beitian arrogantly. Oh right.
Li Beitian suddenly slapped his head.
Ning Chencheng of the Border Control Corps, Drunbility Cheng. Are you Drunbility Cheng? Drunbility Cheng, Li Tianlan, who was watching from the side, twitched the corner of his mouth and almost burst out laughing. Li Beitian ignored Ning Chencheng's almost spitting fire eyes.
With an excited face he chatted on. I've long heard of your name.
You're Drunbility Cheng, aren't you? I heard that you love to show off and can do anything. People in Jianghu call you Drunbility Cheng or Brother Drunbility. I've heard a lot about you. Now that I've seen you today, you really live up to your reputation. Ning Chencheng was speechless. Live up to his reputation? What the hell did that mean? Was his performance just now very pretentious? How did this damned bamboo pole in front of him hear that damn nickname? Wasn't that nickname supposed to be something that only circulated in a small circle? Who are you? Ning Qianqing looked at Li Beitian with his teeth clenched. He wanted to skin him alive. Me? Oh, I'm Li Beitian. I don't think you've heard of me. Li Beitian patted Ning Qianqing's shoulder and greeted him casually. Come, Tianlon, let me introduce you. This is Drunbility Cheng. You can also call him Brother Drunbility. Brother Drunbility is famous for his skill in acting tough. Of course, his strength is also unfathomable. He's one of the top 10 experts of the younger generation, much stronger than me. I'm Ning Qianqing. The muscles at the corner of Major Ning's eyes twitched wildly. He was about to roar. This was Drunbility Cheng? What kind of bullshit introduction was that? Yes, Drunbility Cheng is the same. Brother Drunbility, stop acting tough. It's our first time meeting and I'm very reserved. I don't understand your profound artistic behavior. Li Beitian laughed and put his arm around Li Tianlon's shoulder. Hello, Major Ning. Li Tianlon smiled and extended his hand. His eyes were gentle and clear. He didn't mind treating a real soldier, especially one who dared to fight at the border with 120% respect. Hello, Tianlon. Hearing that Li Tianlon didn't call him Brother Drunbility, Ning Qianqing's expression relaxed and he had a good impression of him. He was really tired of hearing the name Drunbility Cheng. However, those who used to call him that were his friends and he couldn't turn against them. In his opinion, it was a dark history. Hey, Drunbility Cheng. You don't call me Drunbility Cheng. Okay, Brother Drunbility. Don't call me Brother Drunbility. I'm not your brother. Li Tianlon smiled and shook his head. He didn't move, but he felt his phone vibrate slightly in his pocket. He took out his phone and opened it. On the screen, a photo of him and Qin Weibai snuggling together and hooking fingers appeared. Li Tianlon's eyes softened instantly. On the screen, there was a message from Qin Weibai. It wasn't a text message, but a WeChat that seemed to Li Tianlon to be quite high-tech. I've arrived in Billy State. The air in Bruxelles is good and the sunset is beautiful. We should come and have a look together. Li Tianlon's eyes were gentle. His fingers tapped on the screen for a long time, but he didn't know what to reply. He suddenly found that Qin Weibai had changed her profile picture. Her profile picture used to be a vast expanse of white snow, pale and dazzling. Now, it had become a piece of white paper. Li Tianlon subconsciously enlarged Qin Weibai's profile picture. On the paper, there were 2 lines of light and graceful handwriting, like flowing clouds and flowing water. At this moment, Li Tianlon's mind was filled with the intoxicating look of Qin Weibai when she wrote these 2 lines. Who are you to me? Who are you to me? Li Tianlon took a deep breath. At this moment, he was in the Sky Academy, but his mind seemed to have flown to Billy State thousands of miles away, to the sunset in Bruxelles, the capital of Billy State. The sunset there was beautiful, but the beauty beside him was even more beautiful. It was a very strange and comfortable feeling. He held the phone and looked at Qin Weibai's new profile picture. For a moment, he was reluctant to put it down. Beside him, Li Beitian's incessant chatter was still ringing in his ears. It's okay not to call you Drunkard Cheng, but Drunkard Cheng, you even refuse to call me Brother Drunkard. It's hard for me to understand. Tell me, what should I call you? By the way, I heard that the officers of the Border Control Corps all have code names? Tell me, what's your code name? Beside Li Beitian, Ning Qianqing held his breath. He glanced at Li Tianlon calmly, who was holding the phone, and said calmly, My new code name is Man of Sacrifice. Drunkard Cheng. You're showing off again. Get lost. Chapter 12. Generally speaking, Li Tianlon was very satisfied with his 2 roommates. Li Beitian was always joking around. He could get along with anyone quickly without the slightest arrogance or reserve. Such a person was undoubtedly the easiest to get along with. Ning Qianqing, the major of the Border Control Corps who was described by Li Beitian as a pretentious habitual criminal, was a little arrogant, but his personal cultivation was very good and he was not a bad person. Sharing a room with such a roommate was a very comfortable thing. Before this, Li Tianlon was really worried that the Sky Academy would send him 2 arrogant playboys with strong backers. If so, he would have a headache. Even if he wanted to dominate the world and make the Li family return to the peak of Jianghu state, it did not mean that he wanted to dominate the Sky Academy. He just wanted the most precious graduation place. As for other times, Li Tianlan would rather keep a low profile and quietly earn credits. Even if he could not keep a low profile, it was also good to be kind to others and accumulate more connections. If the Sky Academy really sent him 2 arrogant playboys, the dormitory would be in chaos all day long. Li Tianlan could not keep a low profile even if he wanted to. Li Baitian and Ning Qianqing coming over was exactly what he wanted. Lunch was Li Baitian's treat. The 3 of them found a nice restaurant. Li Baitian pulled a pretty girl from his mobile phone's contact list. She was also a freshman of the Sky Academy. Her surname was Yi, and her name was Huayu. It was a very unique name. Yi Huayu's way of addressing Li Baitian was also shocking. She kept calling him young martial uncle with an extremely respectful manner. This made Li Tianlan even more certain that the dormitory building he lived in was extraordinary. Of his 2 roommates, one was a young talent favored by the commander of the Border Control Corps, and the other was some martial uncle. Their backgrounds were certainly not simple. Obviously, except for himself, those who could live in that dormitory building all had a powerful background. After lunch, Li Baitian put on the airs of a senior and righteously said that he wanted to visit his martial nephew Yi Huayu's dormitory. Ning Qianqing said that he wanted to visit some of his comrades. Li Tianlan returned to the dormitory alone, shut himself in his room, and began to meditate. The so-called meditation had many names, such as dhyana, vipassana, mindfulness, and meditation. The names were different, but the effects were exactly the same. The highest realm of meditation was to forget oneself and pursue absolute concentration. In martial arts, the importance of meditation was no less than the importance of increasing one's strength and speed. In fact, it might even be more important. The more powerful one was, the more they valued meditation. It was no exaggeration to say that meditation was a part of martial arts. Moreover, it was the core and the most important part. To freeze ice with a wave of one's hand, to ignite fire with a raise of one's hand, to snap thunder with a flick of one's finger. To achieve all of these, one's strength and speed had to reach a certain level, but at the same time, one needed to have an absolutely focused will. If one's will couldn't be focused, how could one explode with the strongest destructive power and combat strength with just strength alone? Both willpower and strength had their limits. Some people were stuck in the ice-condensing realm all their lives and could not enter the fire-flaming realm. It might be because their strength did not meet the requirements, or their willpower could not be concentrated enough. In martial arts, without concentrated willpower, it was impossible to enter the ice-condensing realm or the fire-flaming realm, let alone the mysterious invincible realm. A day passed quickly in meditation. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Li Tianlan opened his eyes and moved his body. Then, he lay on the bed and listened to the sound of waves beating on the shore outside the window, quietly waiting for dawn. A few hours later, the school officially started. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Li Tianlan, who had slept for less than 3 hours, was awakened by a knock on the door. Ning Qianqing's calm and somewhat arrogant voice sounded outside the door. Tianlan, it's time to assemble. Get ready. Li Tianlan looked at the time and agreed. He put on his camouflage uniform, hurriedly washed his face in the bathroom provided in the bedroom, and then walked out of the room. At 6:40, all the freshmen of the Sky Academy had to assemble in the entrance square not far from the dormitory area, and then participate in the first entrance maneuver of the Sky Academy. The first one to pass the maneuver would be rewarded with 80 credits. This was written in the student code of the Sky Academy, and Li Tianlan naturally would not forget it. Where's Tianlan? Zhuoqing. Wake Tianlan up quickly. It's time to assemble. Li Tianlan poured a glass of water in the living room. As soon as he took a sip, Li Baitian's hurried voice sounded from the porch. With the sound of the door closing, Li Baitian's figure directly appeared in the living room. You didn't come back last night? Li Tianlan and Ning Qianqing asked in unison. The freshman girls of the Sky Academy are too enthusiastic. I fought all night. How could I have time to come back? Li Baitian chuckled. His skinny face, which was no less than a skeleton, had an expression of reminiscence and indescribable wretchedness. Skinny, who the hell are you? The girls of the Sky Academy are all proud and arrogant. Which one of them is ignorant? It's not easy for you to sleep with them whenever you want to. Ning Ziyuan narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Beitian with a playful expression. Of course they fell in love with my handsomeness. It's human nature for men and women to love each other. Li Beitian tidied up the empty clothes on his body and said with a proud expression. Bullshit. Handsomeness and handsomeness? Those women might as well find a cucumber. Ning Qianqing's face was full of sarcasm. How can a cucumber be compared to me? I'm a cannon, okay? I shot to fame. How can a cold cucumber be compared to my cannon? Shot to fame? Cannon? I think you hit the nail on the head. Look at you, you're like a bamboo pole. How can you be compared to a cannon? Needles are more like embroidery needles. Pretentious Cheng. I'll fight you to the death. Li Tianlan rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. He smiled bitterly and said, Okay, there's no time for you to fight. It's time to go. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing snorted at the same time. The former wrapped his skinny hand around Li Tianlan and scolded him indirectly. Tianlan, you have to listen to me. It's not enough for a man to just be pretentious. Yesterday, I inspected the girls' dormitory and found that the quality of the girls this year is quite good. Come with me another day and I'll introduce you to a few. I guarantee you'll be comfortable. Ning Qianqing clenched his teeth and glared at Li Beitian without saying a word. Li Tianlan shook his head and said casually, Mediocre. I'm not interested. As he said this, the dreamy figure that was now in Bruxelles appeared in his mind again. What was that woman, who seemed real and illusory at the same time, doing now? Li Beitian wanted to say more, but Ning Qianqing said impatiently, Are you going or not? It'll be too late if you don't leave now. Do you think the school bus will wait for you? Go. Li Beitian laughed. The three of them went out together, got on the school bus and went straight to the entrance square. At this time, the open square was already densely packed with countless freshmen, all dressed in camouflage uniforms, lined up in a very neat phalanx on the square. Li Tianlan and his two roommates arrived at the square at the same time and stood at the back of the crowd. Right in front of the square was an exquisite rostrum. At this time, a row of tables and chairs had been placed on the 3-meter-high rostrum. Several school leaders were already in place. They sat in their seats and chatted casually with their colleagues. Tianlan, do you see that? The one sitting in the middle is the headmaster of the Sky Academy, Jianghu. He's one of the top 10 experts in Jianghu State. Standing beside Li Tianlan, Li Beitian quickly pointed at the rostrum and took the initiative to introduce him. Li Tianlan nodded and glanced at the rostrum with a calm expression. Jianghu was close to 70 years of age, but he looked unusually young, like a middle-aged man less than 50 years old. He had a gentle and elegant temperament, like a senior scholar, and did not look like a master at all. Top 10 experts in Jianghu State? Li Tianlan was lost in thought. Our marshal is also one of the top 10 experts, and his ranking is one place higher than that of Headmaster Zhuang. Ning Qianqing stood on Li Tianlan's right and said with a cold face. Li Beitian seemed to dislike Ning Qianqing and said mercilessly, Why don't you say 10 years ago? 10 years ago, your marshal was not on the list. A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. Ning Qianqing snorted. Li Beitian shook his head and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. Ignore this pretentious guy. Look at the old lady in red on the left of the headmaster. She's the director of teaching of the Sky Academy, Xianxia. People call her the old witch in Jianghu. She has a strong background and is a ruthless person. Don't offend her. Li Tianlan nodded again. The beauty on the right of the headmaster is the headmaster's granddaughter. She takes her mother's surname and is called Qin Ku. She's the deputy director of teaching and also a famous top genius in Jianghu State. She's one of the youngest thunder-shocking realm experts. Isn't she fierce? Mediocre. Li Tianlan looked disdainful. Li Beitian was silent for a while and then glared at Ning Qianqing. Then he turned his head and said seriously, Stay away from pretentious town in the future. Look, it's only been a day and you're already pretentious. Ahem. A clear cough suddenly sounded from the rostrum in front of them. There was no sound or microphone. The seemingly casual cough came clearly from the air and vibrated in all directions, as if it was ringing in everyone's ears. All the freshmen under the rostrum suddenly stopped talking. An old lady dressed in red had left her seat and was standing on the rostrum at some point in time.
She was about 50 years old and had a short stature. However, her entire body exuded a sharp and fierce aura. Her figure was ordinary and even a little shriveled. Her face also had some natural wrinkles from the passage of time. She stood on the rostrum and glanced around with a cold gaze. Everyone immediately straightened their bodies subconsciously. "Hello, students. I'm Xianxia, the director of teaching of the Sky Academy." Xianxia seemed to be very satisfied with the reaction of the freshmen under the rostrum. She raised the corner of her mouth and revealed a smile. But because of her appearance, her smile looked unusually mean and bitter. Li Tianlan quietly looked at Xianxia, who was being carried up. From the first time he saw her, he disliked the director of teaching of the Sky Academy. It was not because of her ugly appearance and skinny figure, but because of an inexplicable feeling. Li Tianlan always felt that Director Gu was too cold, like a poisonous snake, and was not a kind person. Now when he saw her somewhat twisted smile, he felt even more disgusted in his heart. "First of all, welcome to the Sky Academy. I hope that from the first day you enter the school, you can take this place as your pride and glory." On the rostrum, Xianxia's voice spread to the whole audience and could be heard clearly. The Sky Academy is the earliest special warfare academy in Jianghu State and the most legendary special warfare academy in Jianghu State. Over the past decades, the Sky Academy has produced hundreds of generals, countless senior agents, and several giants of the dark world. The glory of this special warfare academy may not be known to all, but its influence is everywhere. It has the power to influence the pattern of the Imperial Special Warfare System and the ability to change the fate of every freshman. Xianxia paused and her smile faded. She continued, "I can't know all of you, but I know where you come from. Some of you come from the military, some are the elites of the Special Warfare System, and some are the inheritors of various sects among the people. There are iron-blooded soldiers, excellent agents, children of generals, and commoners. But I can tell you for sure that no matter where you come from, you will gain something when you come to the Sky Academy. Every teacher of the Sky Academy is willing to do their best to help you and make you the backbone of the Imperial Special Warfare System. Here is the best growing environment and the cruelest competitive atmosphere. From today on, in the next 3 years, you will constantly encounter the test of blood, pain, and even death. The Sky Academy is a place of the strong, not a place for the weak to survive. So, please remember the motto of the Sky Academy. Go forward with indomitable will. Tell me, are you afraid of death?" After a short silence, a tsunami of voices suddenly broke out on the entrance square, neat and uniform, shaking the sky. Go forward with indomitable will. Everyone tried their best to roar these 4 words. Everyone's face was red and their blood was boiling. It was not because of Xianxia's admonition, but because of the motto of the Sky Academy. It was because of these 4 words. Go forward with indomitable will. These 4 words were the true portrayal of the Sky Academy for decades. Countless thrilling stories and countless legends who turned the tide added innumerable glory to the Special Warfare Academy. Some people roared and went forward with indomitable will to die. Some people laughed wildly and fought to the death without retreating. Some people silently went forward with indomitable will to protect. The history of the Sky Academy's development was paved with the blood and flesh of heroes, so it was glorious and radiant. Very good. On the rostrum, Xianxia nodded and said with a smile, "I'm willing to go with you all the way. I hope you all become the pillars of the country, the pride of the Sky Academy and the entire Jianghu State Special Warfare System. Not a shame." The audience was quiet again. Only Xianxia's excited and shrill voice echoed in the square. The Sky Academy has been established for decades and has countless honors, but there is only one shame. Here, I want to mention a name that disgusts me and everyone. Behind Xianxia, the other school leaders' expressions changed obviously. Headmaster Zhuang Huayang also lowered his eyes. His name is Li Kuangtu. Xianxia looked around and her tone became sharper and harsher. The shame of Jianghu State, the shame of the Sky Academy. Perhaps many students have heard of the name of this traitor. He used to be the most dazzling genius of Jianghu State and entered the invincible realm at the age of 35. But when everyone was optimistic about him, this damn traitor chose to betray. He colluded with the Night Spirit Organization and betrayed Jianghu State, which directly led to the annihilation of the 120,000 most elite troops of Jianghu State. Such a scum. It's simply intolerable that he doesn't die.
And this bastard who betrayed Jianghu state is a graduate of the Sky Academy. He shamed the whole academy and made everyone feel disgusted. Even if he dies, he can't atone for his sins. This kind of trash that even wild dogs don't want to look at has covered nearly half of the glory of the Sky Academy. He died miserably, but he deserved it. But his disgusting and shameless behavior should be engraved on the pillar of shame of the Sky Academy forever to warn all the latecomers. Because of such a bastard, our Sky Academy has been unable to lift our heads for many years. Bastard, scum, trash, bastard. At the opening ceremony of the Sky Academy, the appearance of these words was simply unbearable to look at. But almost all the freshmen ignored Xianxia's words, and the crowd was agitated. Damn Li Kuang too. No, it's too easy for him to die. The 120,000 troops were annihilated. Is it enough for him to die? The national strength of Jianghu state has declined in recent years because there are too many such bastards. Li Kuang too, I wish you can't rest in peace after your death. May your whole family die, damn it. It seemed that every corner of the square was echoing with curses. Xianxia stood on the rostrum, squinting, but there was a trace of cold mockery in the depths of her eyes. In the whole square, perhaps only Li Tianlan's behavior was different from others. Others were either silent or cursing. But Li Tianlan was laughing. He was laughing silently, but the corners of his mouth were curling up. His body was trembling, and so was the corner of his mouth. Everyone could see how humiliated and indignant he was under his smile. But he was still laughing, laughing with all his strength. No one knew that it was Li Kuang too, who was being cursed by everyone. The traitor who had been dead for many years. It was his father. A trace of red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Li Tianlan gritted his teeth and took a deep look at Xianxia on the rostrum. He silently lowered his head and wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth. However, in his heart, there was a clear voice rumbling incessantly agitated. Wait and see. Chapter 13. Li Beitian was the first to notice Li Tianlan's abnormality. Recovering from his thoughts, he turned his head and subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan, just in time to see Li Tianlan lowering his head and wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. Li Beitian was shocked and frowned. He asked in a deep voice, Tianlan, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Although he didn't know Li Tianlan's specific origin, he knew the origin of most of the freshmen here. The atmosphere of competition inside the Sky Academy was fierce, but it was also not easy to get a place to study here. The freshmen sent by the military, the Special Warfare Group, the Secret Service Agency, and the martial arts sect were all selected after many rounds of selection. Many selections were fought from the beginning to the end, and the winner was king. Some people obviously won the final victory, but because they were too seriously injured, they missed the entrance time of the Sky Academy. These people were undoubtedly the unluckiest. There were also some people who could barely get up, but they came to the Sky Academy with serious injuries. These people were not very lucky, because the first day of registration was the beginning of the first maneuver. How good could they get with serious injuries? One step behind could lead to the situation of falling behind step by step. If Li Tianlan was in such a situation, it was simply terrible. It's a small problem. It doesn't matter. Li Tianlan rubbed the corner of his mouth hard, suppressed all the negative emotions in his heart, and tightly pursed his lips with a smile. Of course, his injury did not come from the internal competition, but from the fight with Jianghu on the first day of the school. In the following days, he had stabilized his injury, but because of the agitation just now, the serious injury showed signs of relapse. Thinking, Li Tianlan subconsciously glanced at the rostrum again. This time, he looked at Jianghu. But to his surprise, Jianghu was also looking at him. Their eyes met in the air. Li Tianlan's expression was calm. Jianghu frowned slightly, and her eyes were cold. Li Tianlan smiled at the rostrum, then withdrew his gaze and said slowly, Don't worry, I will definitely get a good ranking. You two also have to work hard. I see. Li Beitian thought for a moment and said decisively, When the maneuver starts, I'll be in front, Tianlan in the middle, and Braggart Cheng in the back. Tianlan, try to reduce your physical consumption. We'll rush to the top 10 together. In the Sky Academy, every student attached great importance to the ranking of any maneuver. The ranking was related to the number of credits and the treatment one would receive. It was something that was worth fighting for.
The ranking of the first maneuver after entering the academy could determine their starting point in the academy, so it was extremely important. If they could make it to the top 10 in such a maneuver, they would definitely attract the close attention of the higher-ups of the academy.
Top 10. Ning Qianqing raised his brows in surprise and looked at Li Beitian. What? You don't have confidence? With your reputation as the city of acting tough, you have the nerve to say that you can't enter the top 10? Even if you want to show off, you should at least say that you can get into the top 3, right? Li Beitian said with a provocative look. As expected, Ning Qianqing began to show off. He glared at Li Tianlan and snorted. Of course I have confidence. I can take Tianlan to the top 10 without you. I'm worried about you. Look at your physique, you can push aside with a little force. Don't drag us down. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly thought of the scene when Li Beitian introduced Ning Qianqing to him when they first met. He automatically ignored the introduction of Ning Qianqing's skill in showing off. What impressed him most was that Li Beitian introduced Ning Qianqing as one of the top 10 experts of the young generation. The top 10 experts of the young generation might become the top 10 experts of Jianghu State many years later. Such a young talent was outstanding in both potential and strength. As long as he was not too unlucky, it was absolutely no problem for him to rush to the top 10. Don't worry, as long as you don't drag us down. It's a deal. The three of us will act together and make it to the top 10 together. Li Beitian chuckled and patted his chest. His palms hit his bones through a layer of skin, making popping sounds. Neither Li Beitian nor Ning Qianqing seemed to leave the seriously injured Li Tianlan behind. They might not see eye to eye with each other, but between the lines, they both meant to take Li Tianlan to the top 10 together. It was impossible for Li Tianlan not to be touched. No matter how vigilant he was, he would not turn a blind eye to such obvious kindness. They were just roommates who had been together for a day. In the competitive atmosphere of the Sky Academy, the two of them were willing to take a burden like him with them. Their broad-mindedness alone was enough to make Li Tianlan look at them with new eyes. Thank you, both of you. Li Tianlan looked at the two standing on his left and right and thanked them sincerely. Ning Qianqing snorted proudly. He raised his head and resumed his aloof look. Li Beitian laughed and waved his hand. It's what I should do. In the next few years, we will be roommates who get along with each other day and night. Our relationship is even closer than that of biological brothers. In a place like this, we will have to go on missions together in the future. That is a real life and death commitment. How can we not share our hearts? Only fools without foresight would be stupid enough to compete with their roommates. You see, Drunkard Chung is a wise man. In the military camp at the border, the feelings of living together are even deeper than here. If you are not willing to share your heart with your classmates who will be studying with you day and night, who else can you count on? No matter what, I still have to thank you. Li Tianlan's tone was sincere. If people respected him, he would respect them tenfold. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing were so loyal to him that he was willing to treat them sincerely. However, I think it's better for me to be at the front later. It's just a minor injury. It won't affect anything. In the process of competing with each other, the frontmost position would definitely face the most pressure. Once his human emperor was fully extended, it would be a spear more than 2 meters long. When he brandished the spear, he could better deal with the pressure coming from the front. His choice to be at the front showed that he was willing to trust Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing, and even tried to trust his back to them. Tianlan, what realm are you in now? Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian looked at each other and the former suddenly asked. What about you? Li Tianlan asked back. Realm was something that could not be faked, but his actual combat strength was far beyond his realm. He wanted to be at the front. He could not tell Ning Qianqing, one of the top 10 young experts, that he had not entered the 4 realms of martial arts, could he? I am at the peak of the ice-condensing realm and can enter the fire-flaming realm at any time. Ning Qianqing said slowly. The corner of Li Tianlan's eye twitched subconsciously. Ning Qianqing was 23 years old and about to enter the fire-flaming realm. With such strength, he was indeed worthy of being one of the top 10 young experts. I'm about the same as Drunkard Cheng. I shouldn't be much worse than him. Li Beitian also said with a calm and confident look on his face. Ning Qianqing was stunned for a moment. He took a deep look at Li Beitian and did not say anything. I'm about the same as you. I shouldn't be much worse than you. Li Tianlan said very modestly. His words were almost the same as Li Baiqian's, with only a few words changed. The corner of Ning Qianqing's mouth twitched a few times. He felt a pain in the ass. Li Baiqian was about the same. So was Li Tianlan. He was ranked 5th among the top 10 young experts. Was the title of the top 10 experts so worthless now? Ahem. Everyone. On the rostrum, a gentle voice suddenly interrupted all the voices below the stage. The headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang, stood in front of Gu Yunxia with a kind expression. All the voices below the stage suddenly disappeared. Every freshman raised their head and looked up at the headmaster standing on the rostrum with reverence. After all, he was one of the top 10 contemporary experts in Jianghu State, who represented the top combat strength of their country. Such a status was much higher than that of Gu Yunxia, the director of teaching. What's your ranking among the top 10 contemporary experts? Li Tianlan tugged at Li Baiqian's clothes and asked in a low voice. 7th. Li Baiqian quickly said, the top 10 contemporary experts are ranked every 10 years. 10 years ago, the headmaster was originally ranked 5th. Over the years, he has been getting older and his state has declined a lot. Li Tianlan nodded with understanding. As time went by, the body would deteriorate. No matter how strong an expert was, his combat strength would continue to decline. This was the law of nature and could not be changed. A hero was past his prime, while a beauty had white hair. This was the most helpless thing. Everyone. On the rostrum, Zhuang Huayang stood straight. He glanced around and continued, I heard a lot of cursing, insulting, and even cursing the traitors on the stage. All of you are the future pillars of our country. I understand your hatred for the traitors. But I also want to remind you that cursing and cursing cannot show that you are very patriotic. No words can express our love for our country. Patriotism requires practical actions. Only voices without actions are nationalistic. Don't you think so? The audience became even more silent. Standing behind Zhuang Huayang, Gu Yunxia's face changed slightly. I've been the headmaster of the Sky Academy for nearly 20 years. I came here after the case of treason happened. Over the years, I've sent away many graduates of the Sky Academy one after another. I've seen them bring honor to the Sky Academy and the special warfare system of Jianghu State. I've seen their blood and bodies fall on the road to the strength of our country. This is the pride of the Sky Academy and Jianghu State. Zhuang Huayang's voice was low and gentle, but with an unquestionable majesty. Yes, I admit that the treason case was indeed a stain on the Sky Academy, even a shame. But shame can't cover up our glory. The treason case has long been a thing of the past. What's the point of saying more? But the Sky Academy still has a future. A better future. Each of us should look forward, because you can't change the past, but you can shape a better future. You will become the backbone of the special warfare system of Jianghu State in the future. Many of you may not be known, but the Sky Academy will remember you and remember any honor you bring to the Sky Academy. We hide in the dark and serve the light. I sincerely hope that each of you can go out from here and make the Sky Academy more brilliant because of you in the future, in the near or far future. The deafening applause sounded like thunder. Only Gu Yunxia's face was extremely ugly and she looked extremely embarrassed. Headmaster Zhuang didn't say much, but to a large extent, he denied her extremely fierce speech just now, which was tantamount to a slap in the face. Under the stage, some people were also applauding thoughtfully. Just now Director Gu and Headmaster Zhuang's speech was, to put it simply, a speech with a slightly different content. But to put it broadly, this might be the different opinions represented by the two big forces. In this way, many people who knew the pattern of the special warfare system of Jianghu State suddenly smiled meaningfully. The special warfare system of Jianghu State, a great change was coming. Chapter 14. In the warm applause, Zhuang Huayang's expression remained unchanged. He pressed his hands down slightly and still smiled gently. He didn't seem to notice Gu Yunxia's embarrassed face behind him, nor did he notice the subtle and weird atmosphere on the rostrum. When the applause subsided, he continued, "Next is the time for the maneuver." His eyes wandered around the whole square and paused quietly in the last row. Then he said flatly, "I'd like to remind you again that the first maneuver after entering the school is very important. It may be related to your final achievements in the Sky Academy. So, please do your best and strive for the best ranking. I'll talk about the content of the maneuver.
Zhuang Huayang pointed to the south and said, "There is a large maze less than 2 kilometers south of you.
Through the maze, you will see a forest. Go all the way east from the forest. The teachers and I will wait for you by a pool on the edge of the forest. I will bring a school bus with 50 seats. The first 50 students to arrive will directly become my students. I will be responsible for each of my students until the next maneuver." There was an uproar. The huge sound wave swept the whole place in an instant. Although most of the freshmen had a general understanding of the content and results of the first entrance maneuver, there was still a great sensation among the freshmen when they heard what Zhuang Huayang said. The first 50 students to arrive would become Zhuang Huayang's students. This basically meant that the classes of other schools would be assigned. The first 50 students would be the classes led by the headmaster, Zhuang Huayang. These 50 students might not necessarily have the greatest achievements in the future, but they could be said to be the most outstanding 50 students among the freshmen at this stage. These people were either powerful, intelligent, or extremely lucky. Everyone had their redeeming qualities. And it was certain that a large part of the perfect graduates 3 years later would come from the classes led by Zhuang Huayang. The Sky Academy held an internal maneuver every 3 months, and Zhuang Huayang's class would always be fixed at a round number of 50 students. In each maneuver, he would only choose the top 50 students. If the students in the top 50 this time fell behind in the next maneuver, they would also lose the qualification to be taught by Zhuang Huayang and would be transferred to other classes. However, it was undeniable that if they entered Zhuang Huayang's class from the first entrance maneuver, they would definitely have a lot more advantages than those in other classes. As one of the top 10 experts in Jianghu State, Zhuang Huayang's teaching was more valuable than that of other classes. Moreover, the other teachers in charge of this class were also the best teachers in the Sky Academy. It was no exaggeration to say that this class of 50 people would be the core group of the entire Sky Academy. Although the internal maneuver of the Sky Academy once every 3 months gave other classes a chance to rush into the core class, the longer the time, the greater the advantage of the members of the core class, and the smaller the chance for students from other classes to rush in. If they could rush in at the beginning, no one would be willing to fall behind. The sounds of discussion grew louder and louder, and the eyes of every new student became incomparably fiery. Zhuang Huayang's voice still came from the rostrum and spread throughout the audience. The next 5 hours will be a drill. After 5 hours, the drill will be over. If you don't arrive at the designated place, 50 credits will be deducted. The first to arrive at the designated place will be rewarded with 80 credits. The second to the 10th place will be rewarded with 50 credits. The 11th to the 50th place will be rewarded with 30 credits. There will be no reward or penalty for those who are ranked below the 50th place. Students can form teams spontaneously, but the number of people cannot exceed 10. After entering the maze, you will not get any supplies, but you can move freely, obstruct, and attack other students except yourself. The Sky Academy has only one requirement, that is, no killing is allowed in the entrance maneuver. Do you understand? Yes. The response of the freshmen below the rostrum was still loud, but this time, everyone's expression was different. Damn it, this old guy is really ruthless. He only said that no killing is allowed, so is it not against the rules to cut off the other's arms and legs? Li Beitian touched his nose and muttered to himself in the last row of freshmen. Li Tianlan smiled, and his eyes were thoughtful. He had to admit that there was a lot of information in Zhuang Huayang's words. Not to mention the vagueness of the only requirement that Li Beitian complained about, nor the temptation of the core class and the credit reward, just the sentence that they could move freely, obstruct, and attack other students except themselves was enough to make people vigilant. Zhuang Huayang was telling them clearly that in the cruel competition, no one but themselves was worthy of trust. Sinister. Ning Qianqing took a deep breath and said coldly, "This is clearly to make us kill each other and be on guard against each other. In this kind of environment, no matter how brilliant the elites cultivated are, they are still loners who dare not trust their companions and don't understand teamwork. Even if they can play a certain role after graduation, it will be extremely limited. But similarly, a team that can trust each other in this kind of environment is the most tacit and reliable team," Li Tianlan said with a smile. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the expressions of Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian. His eyes were deep and bottomless. "Are you two still willing to go together?" "Of course, I'll go with you." Ning Qianqing did not even think and spoke without hesitation. "Me too," Li Beitian said with a smile. "With our strength, we will definitely fight for the top 10. "Then let's go," Li Tianlan said with a smile. When he was very young, Li Honghe had told him that people should not be easily trusted, but they should also be trusted. For people in the dark world, it took a lot of courage to trust others. 70% boldness and 30% cautiousness. Li Tianlan had always been extremely cautious. But now, facing Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing, he had a very strong intuition that as long as he could really trust them, they would never let him down. Li Beitian nodded and raised his eyes to glance at the rostrum. He found that Zhuang Huayang, who was standing on the rostrum just now, had disappeared. Not only Zhuang Huayang, but Gu Yunxia, Qin Ku, and some leaders on the rostrum had also disappeared. Obviously, the maneuver had entered the countdown stage before anyone officially announced the start of the maneuver. A bunch of bastards. Li Beitian cursed angrily. Let's go, let's go. The square formation of freshmen on the square began to disperse, but the whole group was always moving south. Li Tianlan and the other two, who were originally standing in the last row, became the front row of the square formation. In the crowd less than 10 meters behind Li Tianlan, separated by several rows of students, a pair of extremely dazzling girls were walking forward unhurriedly. A fragrant wind floated around them. No matter how hurried the freshmen who walked past them were, they would subconsciously take a few more glances when passing by them. They were a pair of girls about 18 or 19 years old. They looked light and exquisite, but their temperament was completely opposite. The girl on the right had delicate features. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she was extremely elegant and refined. She had the gentleness and cleverness of a pretty daughter from a humble family. She blinked her eyes and curiously sized up the crowd around her. Her eyes were clear and bright. Sister Yuetong, let's hurry up. The beautiful girl took her companion's arm and said in a clear voice. In this kind of maneuver, the faster we walk, the earlier we can arrive. Qingyan, do you know the maze ahead? I heard that Senior Yu and Headmaster Zhuang are very close. Did Senior Yu tell you anything specifically? The girl who was called Sister Yuetong asked with a smile. Even in the most critical eyes, the girl named Yuetong was an almost perfect stunner, or rather, a monster. She was undoubtedly beautiful to the extreme. This kind of beauty was ostentatious and presumptuous, with an extremely strong aggressiveness. Every casual move of hers was able to firmly grab everyone's attention. Her temperament was very pure, but there was a very faint but not negligible enchanting charm in it. She walked forward unhurriedly, like an elf, but more like a goblin. Imperceptibly, she seemed to have become the center of the nearby world. At this moment, the smile on her perfect face was light. Not to mention the other students nearby. Even Yu Qingyan, who was a woman, was a little dazzled. Sister Yuetong, you are so beautiful. Yu Qingyan grasped Wang Yuetong's arm and subconsciously praised. Little flatterer, don't change the subject. Wang Yuetong pursed her lips and smiled. She patted Yu Qingyan's head and became more lively. No, I didn't. Yu Qingyan shook her head honestly and said quietly, Grandpa didn't say much to me. He said that I should observe more and learn more. She paused and didn't go on. In fact, Yu Donglai also told her to contact Brother Li more in the future. But this sentence had nothing to do with the maze in front of them. Wang Yuetong's eyes were sparkling, and she became more enchanting and even enchanting. She said, Then you should observe carefully. Do you think this maneuver is very simple? Look, the more you walk in the front and enter the maze first, the worse the result is likely to be. So don't worry, it's best for us to enter the maze at the end. Yu Qingyan looked at Wang Yuetong blankly and adorably. Wang Yuetong smiled without saying a word and continued to move forward. Her beautiful eyes casually glanced at the group of people walking in the front, who might also be the most unlucky. A figure as thin as a bamboo pole suddenly came into Wang Yuetong's eyes. Wang Yuetong froze for a moment and looked at it very seriously. Then she looked at the people beside the bamboo pole. In her sight, the three people seemed to be walking in the front of the crowd. The bamboo pole stood on the left, and another familiar figure stood on the right. Between the two, a figure who didn't look outstanding and tall walked slowly and firmly. Hey, it's Brother Li. Yu Qingyan looked in the direction of Wang Yuetong and suddenly smiled in surprise. Brother Li? Do you know him? Wang Yuetong remained calm and chuckled. Yes, Brother Li. Grandpa asked me to keep in touch with him. Sister Yuetong, do you know him too? Yu Qingyan nodded and said innocently. I don't know him, but I know the two people beside him. Brotherly doesn't look simple since he can make 2 of the top 10 experts of the young generation walk willingly on his left and right sides. Wang Yuetong's smile became more and more obvious, and 2 clear dimples appeared on her cheeks. She was as beautiful as the most beautiful scenery in the Sky Academy. Let's go and have a look. Wang Yuetong pulled Yu Qingyan's hand and quickened her pace. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. Li Baiqian's exaggerated laughter sounded in her ears, sounding extremely heroic. Who dares to stop me? I'll cut off his head with my sword. Tianlan, what weapon do you use? Unarmed? Or you don't have a suitable weapon? I'll give you one. Don't stand on ceremony. Tell me, what do you like? Pretentious Chung uses a sword. I also use a sword. Why don't you use a sword too? 3 swordsmen, aren't they fierce? 3B asterisk cheese. Aren't they even fiercer? Ha ha ha. Wang Yuetong's expression was strange. Yu Qingyan looked at the bamboo pole in front of her with some astonishment. Li Tianlan's gentle and indifferent voice sounded in front of her. I have my own weapon. What weapon? Show me. Li Baiqian asked casually. Don't hide it. Anyway, you'll show it later. Show me your weapon. The corner of Wang Yuetong's beautiful mouth twitched, and she subconsciously gritted her teeth. I'm not hiding it. I just put it away so that I can carry it. Li Tianlan said with a smile. He shook his arm, and a silver metal pole appeared directly in his hand. Under Wang Yuetong's curious gaze, Li Tianlan waved one hand. There seemed to be wind and thunder roaring in the air. The metal pole, which was perfectly grasped by one hand, suddenly stretched out, pierced the air in front of it, and turned into a silver spear more than 2 meters long. The sharp blades on both sides of the spearhead expanded to the left and right sides. The whole spear was flowing with silver light, looking extremely mighty and domineering. Wang Yuetong's limpid eyes were full of extraordinary splendor. Not only her, but all the freshmen who saw this scene nearby also had their eyes lit up. Damn it! Li Baiqian, who observed this big guy at a close distance, was silent for a few seconds. Then he said with an exaggerated face, Tianlan, is this your big halberd? Chapter 15. A distance of 2 or 3 kilometers was not far for ordinary people, not to mention the elite freshmen of the Sky Academy. The freshmen in the entrance square became more and more scattered. In less than 10 minutes, they were close to the maze mentioned by Headmaster Zhuang Huayang. At the entrance of the maze, there seemed to be only a few narrow doors for people to enter and exit, but the left and right sides of the whole building were constantly expanding in opposite directions. In a trance, there was a kind of majestic atmosphere that one could not see the end of at a glance. Looking at it this way, the whole maze seemed to be a very standard triangle. What a big triangle! The plan is quite standard. Standing at the entrance of the maze, Li Baiqian looked at the maze in front of him and said with a face full of admiration. No, it shouldn't be a triangle. If it was a triangle, there would be a lot of corridors to design inside. It would cost a lot of money and be easy to design. It would be suitable for an amusement park. How could the maze of the Sky Academy be so low-level and simple? Li Tianlan said calmly after carefully observing for a while. He had seen a maze of a similar scale in another place, which was even bigger than the one in front of him. In that damn place, it took him a whole year to barely figure out the overall structure of the maze, and its complexity could be described as crazy. Now, when he saw the maze of the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan suddenly felt very familiar. If his guess was correct, then the maze in front of him was very likely to be a replica of the maze he had seen before. If that was the case, then this maze was not a triangle at all, but a diamond that could deceive everyone's vision. The diamond maze was more complicated than the triangle maze. If one tried to walk through the diamond maze in the form of the triangle maze, it was very likely that he would enter a fork when he was closest to the exit, and then he would go around and around until he returned to the entrance again. Now, when he saw this thing at first sight, Li Tianlan suddenly touched some memories that he did not want to remember, and he felt a headache. So, from the moment we stood here, we should have been deceived. Behind the triangle in front of us, there should be another triangle. When combined, it is diamond? Ning Chenqing raised his eyebrows in surprise. He came from the Border Praetorian Corps. As the large-scale comprehensive corps with the most terrifying combat capability in Jianghu State, the Border Praetorian Corps would send its elites to the Sky Academy or the Deep Sea Academy every year. However, the Sky Academy was a 3-year academy, and it was only responsible for educating one batch of students in 3 years. The content of each batch's entrance maneuver was different. There was even a super entrance maneuver where the first place was awarded 300 credits. Although the maze was difficult, the seniors who had experienced it would not take it to heart and warn their junior brothers and sisters to pay attention to what to do in the maze. At the end of the day, this was just a labyrinth. They would be able to get out of it sooner or later. The most dangerous thing was still the competitors within the labyrinth. Li Tianlan nodded. Before he could speak, a sweet voice sounded directly behind him. Yes, it's a diamond. Li Tianlan subconsciously turned around and looked behind him. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan stepped forward and stopped in front of Li Tianlan. Senior brother, you've been to the Sky Academy before? How do you know that this maze is rhombus-shaped? Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan with her bright crystal-like eyes and asked softly. She stood quietly in front of Li Tianlan. Her ponytail swayed gently, her body fragrance wafted, and her voice was soft. She exuded a kind of pure but extremely enchanting charm. She was simply an enchantress. Ning Qianqing's expression was strange. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Beitian looked at Wang Yuetong dumbfoundedly and swallowed hard. He could not hide the fire in his heart at all. This girl was really too exquisite. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. A strong look of appreciation flashed in his eyes, and then he became calm again. I've never been to the Sky Academy, and this is the first time I've seen this maze. His tone was very gentle, but his eyes turned to Yu Qingyan without any reluctance. He said with a smile, Qingyan, is this your new roommate? Yes. Yu Qingyan nodded obediently and smiled kindly. Brotherly, this is Sister Yuetong, Wang Yuetong. Ahem. As soon as Yu Qingyan's voice fell, Li Beitian coughed violently. He wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth awkwardly, and the fiery desire in his eyes quickly began to fade. Yuetong, why are you here? Ning Qianqing finally spoke. Whether it was in his tone or in his eyes, there was an unconcealable surprise. I'm here to study. Brother Qianqing, how is Uncle Ning? Wang Yuetong giggled. Her eyes sparkled, and her dimples appeared. Her whole body carried a kind of indescribable temptation and enchantment. Not bad. Is Uncle Wang in good health? Ning Qianqing seemed to not dare to look at Wang Yuetong at all and looked away. My dad is also fine. He just met Uncle Ning in Jinling some time ago. Uncle Ning said that he hasn't seen you for more than 2 years. Wang Yuetong blinked her eyes. Ning Qianqing did not say a word and pretended not to hear anything. Wang Yuetong did not talk about this topic. She said a few words casually, and her bright eyes rested on Li Tianlan again. She moved her feet and circled around Li Tianlan several times, not hiding her interest in Li Tianlan at all. Li Tianlan did not feel anything, but Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian were so nervous that their bodies straightened and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Li Tianlan was puzzled. Just as he was about to speak, Wang Yuetong stopped and took the initiative to reach out to him. She said with a smile, What's your name, senior brother? My name is Wang Yuetong. I'm Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan reached out and shook hands with Wang Yuetong. The girl's palm was indescribably smooth and slender, and her fingers were slender. He let go of her without batting an eyelid and introduced, This is my other roommate, Li Beitian. Wang Yuetong glanced at the bamboo pole, who was covered in cold sweat, and said with a playful expression, Your name is Li Beitian? Yes, I'm Li Beitian, Duke Yuetong. Just call me by my name. Wang Yuetong waved her small hand and directly interrupted Li Beitian's words. All her interest seemed to be in Li Tianlan. She glanced at Li Tianlan again and suddenly smiled. Senior brother Tianlan, where are you from? My ancestral home is Yuzhou, and I grew up in Nanyun province. Li Tianlan was polite and courteous, but he was highly alert in his heart. He did not know everything about the outside world, but it did not mean that he was stupid. A woman like Wang Yuetong was qualified to bring disaster to a country and people wherever she was. She stopped here for a while. And many freshmen around her stopped, intentionally or unintentionally. Except for the battle with Qin Ku when he first entered the school, Li Tianlan thought that his performance was not out of line. He was low-key and mediocre, and he hid it well. In this way, It was absolutely not a good thing for a girl like Wang Yuetong to suddenly show affection to him. Moreover, judging from the attitude of Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing toward Wang Yuetong, it was enough to show that they had a powerful background. Li Tianlan did not want to get in touch with such people at all. The more he got in touch with such people, the more likely it was that his real identity would be exposed. The consequences of exposing his identity were what Li Tianlan could not afford now. Before entering the thunder-shocking realm, at least before entering the fire-flaming realm, Li Tianlan's trump card to protect himself was too limited, so he had to be careful. Nanyun, the scenery is beautiful, but it's too warm. No, senior brother Tianlan. Have you ever been to Beijiang? Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan curiously, her beautiful big eyes blinking like the most expensive doll. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. His expression did not change, but a trace of killing intent was brewing in his heart. What did she know? Just because of the maze in front of him? No, I haven't been there. Li Tianlan said in a flat tone. He nodded at Yu Qingyan and said, Qingyan, we're going in. Do you want to go with us? Yu Qingyan blushed slightly. Thinking of her grandfather's instructions, she suddenly felt a little tempted. But looking at Wang Yuetong standing aside, she shook her head subconsciously and said, I want to go with Sister Yuetong. You want to go with me, and also with your brother Li, right? Wang Yuetong looked at Yu Qingyan with a smile and reached out to pull her to her side. She said to Li Tianlan, Senior brother Tianlan, there are only 3 of you, and we are 2 weak girls. Why don't we team up? Li Tianlan frowned slightly, but he could not refuse. He turned his head to look at his 2 unusually silent roommates and said, What do you think? It's up to you. Ning Qianqing was a little absent-minded and said subconsciously. Then he realized that he had said something wrong and quickly corrected himself, It's up to me. Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes subconsciously, and her heart suddenly trembled. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's too obvious that the 2 sentences are trying to cover up something. Could it be that brother Qianqing really came to be someone's lackey? What makes people even more speechless is that senior brother Tianlan in front of them obviously has not figured out the situation. It's up to me too. Li Beitian said simply. Then let's go together. Li Tianlan said calmly. It's just that we are not familiar with the maze. If we affect Yuetong's ranking, I hope you won't blame us. Of course not. If we follow senior brother Tianlan, we will definitely get through the maze as soon as possible. Wang Yuetong smiled sweetly, but there was some meaning in her eyes. Sure enough, she was still testing him. Li Tianlan turned around silently, his eyes cold. This female classmate, who seemed to have a powerful background, seemed to really start to have doubts. To some extent, her suspicion was indeed right. Judging from the appearance alone, he had seen this maze before, and it was in Beijiang province. That was the first time he walked out of Li's village, out of the primeval forest, and went to the endless desert. Li Tianlan breathed softly and took the lead to walk into the maze. The 5 of them turned around the first narrow path of 7 or 8 meters in the maze. After turning a corner, the road of the maze suddenly appeared in front of them. What appeared in front of them were more than a dozen intersections. The road made of the same blue bricks was 3 meters wide, spreading deep into the maze. This road went left, this road went right, this road went forward. The same road, but the direction was completely different. In front of more than a dozen intersections, countless freshmen went in and out. Some went in from the intersections, and some came back from the depths of the road. There was a lot of shouting and cursing. What the hell is this? These people are already confused at the very beginning of the road? Li Beitian looked incredulous. Wang Yuetong, who had been paying close attention to Li Tianlan's expression, also found that he was also shocked. But what did such a shock mean? She approached Li Tianlan quietly and said softly, Senior brother Tianlan, how should we go? Whatever. Li Tianlan said casually, but his heart was full of emotions. The same. Almost all the same. The maze in front of them was based on the maze in Beijiang. Both the outside and the inside were the same, exactly the same. Under such circumstances, if Li Tianlan went all out, it would even take him less than 10 minutes to get out of this maze. Because he knew which way was the right way. Which way was misleading. Go here. Li Tianlan suddenly pointed to an intersection and said calmly. Wang Yuetong suddenly froze. She said subconsciously, Here.
If this road was right, it would be infinitely close to the exit in the end, but it would eventually go around to this position. This was a typical detour, and a super detour.
It's here.
Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong and said softly, "Yuetong, is there a problem?" He naturally knew that this road was wrong, but he also wanted to dispel Wang Yuetong's suspicion of him. In the current situation, getting out of the maze as soon as possible was not the most important thing. The most important thing was not to let Wang Yuetong suspect anything. So in this maze, he had decided to go as far as possible.
No.
Wang Yuetong immediately came to her senses and said with a sweet smile,
"Okay, we'll go wherever you want. I'll go with you."
Li Beitian laughed and put his skinny palm on Li Tianlan's shoulder casually. But he suddenly pushed Li Tianlan forward, as if he was deliberately pushing Li Tianlan forward. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat and he did not resist this force. He followed Li Beitian and quickly took a few steps forward, keeping a distance from Wang Yuetong behind him. Ning Qianqing followed without hesitation. Yu Qingyan and Wang Yuetong also followed. In a short time, this weird team of 5 seemed to have established its core. At the forefront, Li Beitian put his hand on Li Tianlan's shoulder and almost dragged him forward. The two took the lead and turned into an intersection. Li Beitian's voice sounded directly in Li Tianlan's ear, as if he was afraid of being heard. "Tianlan, you'd better stay away from Wang Yuetong. Never, ever provoke her. Otherwise, even if the 3 of us were to join forces, we wouldn't be a match for him. Even if we brought out our backers, it wouldn't be enough. In the Sky Academy, there are not many people that I can't provoke, and even fewer people that pretending Cheng and I can't provoke. But Wang Yuetong is definitely one of them." Li Tianlan paused, glanced at Li Beitian, and whispered, "What's her background?"
Li Tianlan looked solemn.
He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said in a deep voice, "Princess Yuetong, the Wang's siren." He paused and continued, "She ranks 7th among the top 10 experts of the young generation."
7th?
Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and took Li Beitian into a dead end at random. Li Beitian nodded and was about to speak when he suddenly froze. He opened his mouth wide and looked at the front as if he had seen a ghost in the daytime.
For a moment, he was dumbfounded. Li Tianlan was also stunned.
In front of them was a black brick wall, the most common thing in the maze, blocking all the way forward. But in the corner of the wall, 2 people stood motionless. One was an old man and the other was a young man and a woman. The man, who looked gentle like a middle-aged scholar, was looking at Li Beitian and Li Tianlan with a smile and said in a gentle tone, "2 students, what do you mean by 7th? Beside the middle-aged scholar, a beautiful woman full of maturity and indifference was looking at Li Tianlan and Li Beitian coldly. Patter.
Chapter 16.
Principal. The headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang. There was also Qin Ku, the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. Not only Li Beitian, but even Li Tianlan also felt dizzy. They would not be surprised to see these 2 people at any time and in any place. But to see them here at this time was a little unexpected. The maze was an extremely important place for the first internal maneuver of the freshmen. However, the principal and the deputy director of the teaching office were hiding in the blind spot of the maze without saying a word.
What was the meaning of this? Was he playing hide and seek?
If he hadn't heard that Zhuang Huayang was Qin Ke's grandfather, Li Tianlan would have suspected that the 2 of them had an improper relationship.
"Hello, headmaster."
Li Tianlan breathed gently and calmed himself down in an instant. He bowed slightly to Zhuang Huayang, then straightened up and looked at Qin Ku. He said with a smile, "Hello, Director Qin." Qin Ku snorted and stared at Li Tianlan fiercely. Zhuang Huayang nodded with a smile on his face. He looked at Li Tianlan as if he was looking at a rare treasure. It was similar to the way Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan a few minutes ago, but it was not exactly the same. Wang Yuetong's eyes were full of interest, curiosity, and playfulness. Zhuang Huayang's eyes were also full of interest, but there was a hint of understanding in them. Li Tianlan was still smiling, as if he was wearing a mask on his face, but his heart was completely tense. Did the old man in front of him know his identity? Or was it because of the fight between him and Qin Ku? But in that battle, Qin Ku didn't suffer a loss. Instead, she was seriously injured. Could it be that Zhuang Huayang deliberately blocked her here for the teacher named Zhou Zhou?
Why did it have to be like this? In just a few seconds, the atmosphere in the corner of the maze, with their backs facing the green brick wall, instantly became extremely heavy and oppressive. Li Beitian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and quietly straightened his body. His eyes were focused as he stood beside Li Tianlan. He seemed to have made up his mind. Seeing this detail with her own eyes, Xianxia's eyes suddenly froze. Footsteps could be heard behind him. Ning Qianqing, Wang Yuetong, and Yu Qingyan followed Li Tianlan's footsteps into the blind spot at the same time. The moment they saw Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ku, the three of them were equally stunned. Principal, Director Qin. Hello, Headmaster. Qin Ku's expression remained unchanged. Zhuang Huayang still nodded amiably and said with a smile, Hello, students. Principal, why are you and Director Qin here? Behind Li Tianlan, Wang Yuetong's beautiful face was a little blank, but she quickly glanced at Li Tianlan thoughtfully. During the entrance maneuver, two high-level officials of the school actually appeared to meet a group of freshmen. This kind of thing was too unusual. Intuitively, Wang Yuetong felt that it must have something to do with Li Tianlan. It was not only because Li Tianlan was very likely to have been to the most secret maze, but also because Wang Yuetong had an inexplicable intuition. Wang Yuetong had always trusted her intuition. But this time, her intuition told her that there was something wrong with Li Tianlan. This boy was too quiet. There was no sharpness, no aura. He just stood there casually. He was clearly the core, but he was so quiet that people couldn't help but ignore him. Still waters run deep. In a trance, Wang Yuetong actually had a feeling that the other party was unfathomable. Among the 5 people present at the moment, although Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing had terrifying backgrounds, they were not enough for Zhuang Huayang to meet them in person in the maneuver. Yu Qingyan, who was similar to Zhuang Huayang's adopted granddaughter, would not let Zhuang Huayang appear in person on such an occasion. As for herself, Zhuang Huayang and some high-level officials of the Sky Academy had already met her when she entered the school, so there was no need to see her again now. The only one left was Li Tianlan, who people couldn't figure out. Sure enough, Zhuang Huayang's words once again confirmed the correctness of Wang Yuetong's intuition. I have something to communicate with Li Tianlan. I don't want to waste your precious maneuver time. Do you mind? Zhuang Huayang said with a smile. The current top 10 experts of Jianghu State seemed to have a good temper to a certain extent. No matter what happened, he could smile, which made people feel good at first sight. Only a fool would say that he minded. They all shook their heads, but intentionally or unintentionally, no one chose to avoid it. Since the principal did not mention it, they were naturally willing to cooperate and play dumb. Zhuang Huayang just looked at Li Tianlan with a smile, waiting for his attitude. What do you want, principal? Just say it. Li Tianlan opened his mouth and said with respect. Okay. Zhuang Huayang was still smiling, but his eyes became sharp. Li Tianlan, why did you come to the Sky Academy? This question was easy to answer, but also difficult to answer. It seemed to be asking about Li Tianlan's goal, and also asking if Li Tianlan had other purposes. Li Tianlan looked indifferent and said slowly, I don't understand what you mean, principal. Then I'll make it clear. Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes. Do you have a goal in the Sky Academy? Was he going to be like a lot of other freshmen, trying to earn credits to graduate, then wait until he graduated to be a military officer so that he wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing? Or even have a bright future? No. Li Tianlan looked calm and looked straight at Zhuang Huayang. I want to be the first. The first? Zhuang Huayang chuckled without surprise. Every session of the Sky Academy students will stay. Some of them don't have enough credits for ordinary graduation within 3 years, and they still have half a year to make up for it. At the same time, there were also a few people who, due to luck or other special reasons, ultimately missed out on the first place that everyone wanted. These people were the strongest students in the previous cohort, and they would mix in with the new students and start all over again, competing with them. If you want to be the first, your competitors are not only the students you see, but also some of your seniors. Under such circumstances, do you have the confidence to get the first place? Yes. Li Tianlan said without hesitation in a deep voice. His voice was not high, but everyone could hear the confidence in his words. Full of confidence. You're ambitious. Zhuang Huayang smiled. So, to be the first, to become a giant, to fight for the country, to have clouds and rain with a turn of your hand, is this your goal?
Li Tianlan nodded solemnly. He did not speak, but his whole body showed a kind of determination to achieve this goal even if he died.
Then I don't understand.
Zhuang Huayang shook his head and sighed.
With such strength, ambition, and confidence, why do you still want to deliberately keep a low profile? Li Tianlan, what on earth do you want to hide? If you want to fight for the first place, you must be outstanding in all aspects. It's hard not to attract people's attention. You are the first in everything, but you like to pretend to be weak in daily life. If others don't suspect you, who will? You are so low-key and unpredictable. Even if all of us can refrain from exploring your secrets, even if you graduate with the first place, so what? You can't get the trust of the country, and in the end, it's just a waste of effort. Is such a result good for you?
Li Tianlan's body suddenly shook, and in just a moment, he was already soaked with cold sweat. Deliberately keeping a low profile, hiding himself, and not being understood, even if he graduated with the first place, so what? After the treason case, the high-level officials of Jianghu state have scruples. You have the ability, but you are not trusted. Then what kind of giant will you become? I don't have to ask what secrets you want to hide, but others won't? Xianxia, Director Gu, is mainly responsible for the ideological education of the whole school. If you are so guilty, you will be targeted by her. Why bother?
I'm not guilty.
Li Tianlan flatly denied, but his heart was already in a mess.
Zhuang Huayang deliberately pointed out the treason case and Xianxia. Did this old man really know his identity? Did you Donglai tell him?
This matter was so sensitive. Did you Donglai dare to tell Zhuang Huayang?
Could Zhuang Huayang be completely trusted? Never guilty? Maybe.
Zhuang Huayang smiled indifferently, and suddenly looked at Li Tianlan and asked, Li Tianlan, do you dare to believe me?
Trust your headmaster.
Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Zhuang Huayang. The gentle mask he always wore on his face seemed to be disappearing little by little, and his eyes also became suspicious and indifferent.
So what if I believe? So what if I don't believe? If you believe me, please give it a try.
I guarantee with my reputation and the lives of all my family members that within a year, no matter what, I will do my best to keep you safe. Zhuang Huayang looked at the indifferent eyes in front of him with a solemn expression. He took a deep breath and continued, regardless of everyone's sudden change of expression. Of course, if you don't believe me, just pretend that I didn't say anything and we never met today. Wang Yuetong, who had been watching this drama as a bystander, quickly changed the look in her eyes, and even her breathing became a little rapid. A guarantor like Zhuang Huayang was extremely needed by anyone, even her family. But now he gave it to Li Tianlan? Why? Only Li Tianlan was still as calm as water.
Headmaster, you're too serious.
As the headmaster, I dare not disbelieve you, but I need a reason.
A reason?
Zhuang Huayang's smile was completely stretched. There are many reasons, but I can only say two. First, Boss Qin values you very much. She persuaded old you to let me keep you safe for a year. She and old you both owe me a favor. Second, I'm willing to protect you because of my respect for some other people or things.
Silence.
After a long silence, Li Tianlan finally opened his mouth and said in a cold voice, In that case, I also owe you a favor, headmaster.
Zhuang Huayang's smile became more and more obvious.
He knew that he had gotten the result he wanted from this conversation. He nodded and said with a smile, Then I'll wait and see for this maneuver.
Just watch. Li Tianlan's eyes were calm and cold. Zhuang Huayang laughed and turned slightly. In front of the brick wall, a flash of lightning flashed. His and Qin Ke's figures had disappeared in an instant. Li Tianlan stood where he was, deep in thought. Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian stood on either side of Li Tianlan, looking solemn. Yu Qingyan looked puzzled. Only Wang Yuetong vaguely felt that she seemed to have witnessed something. At the same time, on another road less than 30 meters away from Li Tianlan, Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ke appeared again. The air around them was violently distorted, but everything was silent. A few meters away, freshmen kept shuttling by, but no one noticed their existence. Grandpa, why do you help him like this? Qin Ke stood beside Zhuang Huayang and asked. She was not dissatisfied, but a little confused. Why? Zhuang Huayang smiled indifferently. Li Taishu and Ning Qianqing, two of the top 10 experts of the young generation, are willing to serve him. Wang Yuetong also pays so much attention to him, which has proved that Li Tianlan has now entered the sight of some big shots behind them. Why shouldn't I help such a person?
That's all.
Qin Ke looked at her grandpa's expression and asked seriously. Zhuang Huayang was silent for a moment.
In his granddaughter's expectant eyes, he shook his head slightly and said with a solemn expression, "Haven't you always wanted to ask me where I was a few days ago?"
Qin Ke nodded slightly. Zhuang Huayang said with a self-deprecating smile, "In fact, I didn't go anywhere. I've been in the Sky Academy, watching Li Tianlan in his room. It's just that you don't know, and he didn't notice." Seeing that Qin Ke's expression instantly became extremely strange, he continued, "In the past few days, he has been meditating every day. Qin Ke, have you ever seen a person who hasn't entered the 4 realms of martial arts meditate for more than 16 hours a day?" "That's impossible," Qin Ke said flatly. "I'm now in the thunder-shocking realm, but the limit of my daily meditation is only 10 hours. I can't even do 16 hours. As an expert of the thunder-shocking realm, Qin Ke could sit still for a few days without a problem. But meditation was different. The goal of meditation was to forget oneself and to be absolutely focused on one's will. Qin Ke was now an expert of the thunder-shocking realm, but she could only let her will be absolutely focused for 10 hours. If she wanted to make progress, she could only accumulate it slowly in meditation again and again. 1 minute more this time, 2 minutes more next time. And the longer she meditated, the faster she would make progress. In Qin Ke's current state, the limit of absolute concentration was only 10 hours. Once it exceeded this time, her will would be shaken. If she forced herself to hold on, the effect was equivalent to not making progress but going backward. It was impossible for a person who could meditate deeply for 16 hours to not enter the 4 realms of martial arts. Even a pig could enter the fire-flaming realm with such concentration. Impossible? Zhuang Huayang's smile was complicated, and so was his eyes. He looked in the direction of Li Tianlan and said softly, "Isn't there one?" At this moment, even though Qin Ke had already guessed it, she was still shocked, speechless. How is this possible? She took a deep breath and muttered to herself, "Nothing is impossible." He did not meditate deeply for 16 hours a day, but for several days in a row. I wanted to see how many days he could hold on, but unfortunately. Zhuang Huayang shook his head regretfully. "Unfortunately what?" Qin Ke asked subconsciously. "Unfortunately, I couldn't hold on. I watched him for 3 days in a row, and I almost starved to death. He has such an identity, such talent, and such a family background. I'm willing to protect him for a year." Zhuang Huayang sighed again. Identity? Background? Qin Ke frowned and said nothing, but she was thinking about what Grandpa had found in these days. Because of Li Tianlan, Li Taishu, Ning Qianqing, Qin Weibai, Yu Donglai, and even myself have now become the pawns of the person playing chess in the dark. Look, how many forces are involved. In recent years, there seems to be a force pushing something in the dark. Now, it seems to be more and more obvious. No matter who is behind Li Tianlan, what they are planning is earth-shattering. Zhuang Huayang shook his head and then smiled sarcastically. And today, that idiot Gu Yunxia mentioned the treason case again. Now it seems that this matter is likely to inadvertently help the person playing chess in the dark. It's getting more and more interesting. Qin Ke twitched the corner of her mouth and said coldly, "Director Gu's performance at the entrance ceremony today is completely beneath her status." Zhuang Huayang shook his head and said, "She also has no choice. She is just a vanguard and can only follow the general trend. The person behind Gu Yunxia is only plotting a murderous weapon. Everything behind Li Tianlan is really terrible when you think about it carefully. At present, there are only a few clues, but it is already turbulent. Once it fully erupts one day, how magnificent will it be?" "Grandpa, do you think—" Qin Ke hesitated for a moment and said cautiously, "Do you think all this will involve the palace master behind Qin Weibai? Or is all this secretly planned by him?" As a mysterious rising figure in Huiting in recent years, whether Qin Weibai had a backer in Zhongzhou state was still shrouded in mystery. But her backer in the dark world, as long as it was in public, was known to all. "No." Zhuang Huayang thought for a while and shook his head very slowly. "He is abroad and can't do anything. No matter how invincible he is, he can't advance or retreat freely under the muzzle of the human emperor.
Neither the person holding the human emperor nor the one behind Xianxia will allow him to enter Jianghu state unless he wants to die. He took a deep breath, looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "The wind is rising and the clouds are surging." "Grandpa, do you remember what semi-immortal Xianxia said a few years ago when he appeared in Yuzhou?"
Xianxia suddenly said.
"Didn't he say that the person holding the human emperor was a saint inside and a king outside? The old guy is just deliberately mystifying things." In the face of his granddaughter, Zhuang Huayang was dismissive of the Taoist eccentric who was close to a half-immortal in Jianghu state. "Deliberately mystifying things? Grandpa, do you really think so? Xianxia is famous in Jianghu state. He doesn't speak, but once he does, will he say anything wrong? Not to mention his legendary deeds of locking the dragon vein for Jianghu state for 30 years.
Xianxia said disapprovingly.
"Why do you mention that old guy Xianxia?" Zhuang Huayang was obviously a little irritable when he mentioned the famous half-immortal in Jianghu state. When he saw the person holding the human emperor, he said that he was a saint inside and a king outside. "But Grandpa, do you remember what he said when he saw the super big shot behind Director Gu?"
Xianxia said in a serious tone.
Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. "When the heavenly sun appears, the catastrophe is coming. The heavenly sun will face the catastrophe." "Who will face the heavenly sun?" Xianxia said word by word. "Grandpa, great changes are coming in the dark world. We have to prepare early."
Chapter 17. Inside the maze made of black bricks. Li Tianlan stood quietly, as if he was lost in thought.
It had been more than 10 minutes since Zhuang Huayang and Xianxia left. During these 10 minutes, Li Tianlan remained motionless and frighteningly silent. Not only him, but Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing were also silent. Their bodies were straight and they stood silently beside Li Tianlan, like two loyal guards who were firm and lifeless.
Yu Qingyan was gentle and patient.
She also noticed that the meeting between Zhuang Huayang and Li Tianlan was unusual, so she just stood there without saying a word. Only Wang Yuetong stood in the last row. Although she did not speak, her eyes kept moving between Li Tianlan and the other two. Her eyes seemed to rest on Li Tianlan most of the time, and the interest in her eyes grew stronger and stronger.
Wang Yuetong knew that her current state was a little dangerous.
Emotionally speaking, when a woman had a strong interest in a man, it often meant the beginning of a good or bad relationship. But she was just a young girl in her 20s this year. Facing Li Tianlan, a man who seemed to be full of mysteries, she could not control her curiosity. Zhuang Huayang guaranteed with his personal reputation and the lives of his family.
Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing followed.
The support of Yu Donglai, who was known as the poison doctor and still had a certain influence in the secret service system of Jianghu state. What was so special about Li Tianlan that he could get so much unusual attention?
Wang Yuetong was eager to make a move.
She could not help but have a desire to dig out all of Li Tianlan's secrets.
20 minutes. Li Tianlan still did not move.
The atmosphere in the dead corner of the maze became more and more subtle and oppressive. Although this place was a dead end, there were still several waves of freshmen who inadvertently walked here in 20 minutes. However, after seeing Li Tianlan and the others, no one caused any trouble. Since there was no way forward, everyone wisely chose to retreat. The road in the maze had just begun, but now they could not wait to jump out and attack others. They were either crazy or fools.
30 minutes. Li Tianlan still didn't move.
From the beginning to the present, he seemed to have fallen into a very strange state. From head to toe, not even a hair on his body had moved. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan were a little far away and did not feel anything, but Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian were getting more and more surprised.
"Tianlan seems to be meditating?"
Li Beitian finally couldn't help but whisper. He was the closest to Li Tianlan, so he could clearly feel that Li Tianlan's breathing was getting steadier and longer, with an indescribable frequency, which was completely consistent with the state of meditation.
Ning Qianqing nodded.
He felt as ridiculous and shocked as Li Beitian. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan were equally shocked. Wang Yuetong took a step forward and approached Ning Qianqing. She whispered, "Is senior brother Tianlan really meditating?"
"I think so,"
Ning Qianqing said with a wry smile, a little uncertain. It was probably the first time in the Sky Academy's decades of history that Ning Qianqing entered a meditative state at the beginning of the entrance maneuver. Martial Dao meditation required absolute concentration of the will.
For the vast majority of people, they needed an extremely quiet environment to slowly focus their attention. Taking Xianxia as an example, in a quiet environment, he needed at least half an hour to an hour to enter a meditative state. His state of mind was already outstanding enough among the younger generation. But what about Li Tianlan? In the maneuver, the sound of footsteps was endless. From the moment Zhuang Huayang left, he seemed to have begun to meditate. What a terrifying state of mind it took to meditate at any time. He can enter meditation in an instant. Such a state of mind is amazing. Wang Yuetong's eyes were shining, and her smile became increasingly bright and enchanting. She suddenly realized that her inadvertent curiosity seemed to have really discovered a great treasure, or rather, a talent. Li Beitian laughed bitterly and shook his head. That's true, but this is really not a good time to meditate. So, if I'm not wrong, senior brother Tianlan should be about to break through. What the headmaster said just now was very clear. It was clear that he didn't want to have any scruples, so he chose this time to break through and improve his combat capability. There was a trace of expectation in Wang Yuetong's tone that she didn't even notice. She really wanted to see what this quiet and scary boy was like when he was arrogant. What realm do you think senior brother Tianlan is in now? Ice condensing realm at least. Li Beitian said with some uncertainty. He just said that his combat capability is similar to mine and Brother Awesome's, so he should be in the ice condensing realm. If he breaks through, will he enter the fire flaming realm? When he said this, he opened his eyes wide in disbelief. In deep meditation, he concentrated his will to the extreme, sublimated in an instant, and successfully broke through to the fire flaming realm. It sounded normal, but now Li Tianlan seemed to be less than 20 years old. There were few experts in the fire flaming realm at this age in the entire Jianghu state. If Li Tianlan really succeeded in breaking through, the list of the top 10 young experts in Jianghu state might have to be rearranged. He's moving. Li Baitian's heart surged. He wanted to say something, but he inadvertently saw Li Tianlan out of the corner of his eye and suddenly blurted out 2 words. Everyone's eyes instantly focused on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's posture didn't seem to change, but he seemed to be straighter than before. His vertical hands were trembling slightly, and his fingers were slowly clenching. A series of bone-cracking sounds came from his body, from top to bottom, densely packed. Li Tianlan suddenly clenched his fists and opened his eyes. In the air, an extremely sharp whistling sound suddenly rang out the moment he clenched his fist. With his clenched fist as the center, several fierce or heavy gusts of wind cut through the air. They were invisible and intangible, but their momentum was awe-inspiring. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Baitian's mouth twitched, and he looked at Li Tianlan with a speechless face. After a while he slowly asked, "Tianlan, you broke through?" "Yes." Li Tianlan's eyes were relaxed, and he said with a smile, "Yes, I broke through to the qi-controlling realm. Not the fire-flaming realm, not the ice-condensing realm. It was the most basic qi-controlling realm." Li Baitian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His voice sounded like a moan. "Congratulations. Congratulations. Tianlan, you've really learned bad things from acting tough Cheng." He didn't despise Li Tianlan's low realm, but he suddenly remembered that before they set off, Li Tianlan told him in Ning Qianqing that he was about the same as them. At that time, Li Tianlan hadn't even entered martial arts. It was indeed about the same, just about 2 realms apart. What a reserved person. He had only known acting tough Cheng for a day. How could he also start to act tough? "Congratulations, everyone." Li Tianlan chuckled. He naturally knew what Li Baitian was thinking now, but he didn't bother to explain. It would be too tiring to explain the serious inconsistency between combat strength and realm. He had already made his stand to Zhuang Huayang that he would no longer keep a low profile. Whether he wanted to or not, he had to be strong to the end. At that time, Li Baitian would naturally understand his current state. Li Tianlan already knew what to do before he came. What Zhuang Huayang said just now did give him a lot of inspiration. He understood the principle of accepting good advice, but it didn't mean that he would easily change his behavior and conduct because of others' words. But Li Tianlan also knew that since Zhuang Huayang had shown up, there was not much room for him to choose. At worst, he had to keep a low profile and do things in a high profile. He was indomitable in martial arts, but it didn't mean that he didn't know when to stop. In the face of a headmaster who was likely to know his identity, if he didn't make a little compromise and change,
The consequences would be unpredictable.
Qingyan. Li Tianlan suddenly spoke.
He looked at Yu Qingyan and asked, "When Senior you went to visit Headmaster Zhuang, do you know what they said?" He had to know whether Zhuang Huayang knew his identity and how he knew it, because it was about Zhuang Huayang's attitude and position.
I don't know. Yu Qingyan shook her head honestly.
Grandpa never tells me about this.
Li Tianlan nodded slightly and said nothing.
Senior brother Tianlan, what are you worried about?
Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan meaningfully and asked aloud.
Although Li Tianlan's low realm surprised her, she still had a strong interest in Li Tianlan.
I just asked casually.
Why are you so sensitive, junior sister Yuetong?
It's not a good thing to be too curious. Li Tianlan smiled indifferently. Wang Yuetong was stunned.
At this moment, she finally found that Li Tianlan was a little different from just now. At first glance, there seemed to be no change, but compared with half an hour ago, there was a hint of looming sharpness in him now. Especially the last sentence, which was soft but firm. It seemed to be an exhortation, but it could be understood as a warning, which seemed to be possible. She called him senior brother Tianlan just out of politeness, but this person actually took the opportunity to call her junior sister. The distance between them was much closer. But judging from Li Tianlan's expression, it was obvious that he didn't take her seriously. Wang Yuetong raised her delicate eyebrows slightly and said with a chuckle, I just asked casually. Senior brother Tianlan seems to be more sensitive than me.
But I think what the headmaster just said is right.
If you keep a low profile and deliberately hide, how can you make those people fight for you? She was talking about Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian, but Li Tianlan thought of those who had died for the Li family. At this moment, Li Tianlan's mind was like a tide, surging. He thought of the former glory of the Li family, the long winter night in the cold and wet forest at the border, the camp on the border where too many people were unwilling to accept their fate, the vast desert and dazzling maze in Beijiang, Gu Yunxia's mean and ugly face on the rostrum, and Yu Donglai, who obviously didn't like him but was still willing to help him after so many years, and Qin Weibai. All kinds of pictures kept rotating in his mind. Li Tianlan raised the corner of his mouth and smiled brightly.
Like the morning glow.
That makes sense. He looked at Wang Yuetong and said with a smile, In that case, let's go from here. He stretched out his hand and pointed at a blind spot in the maze, a blind spot that was blocked by a green brick wall. This? Li Beitian smiled bitterly and said, How can we go from here?
Do we bump into it?
The blue brick maze was a completely enclosed structure. The walls, ceiling and floor were all blue bricks. Although Li Beitian didn't know this maze, he recognized the blue bricks. This kind of brick came from Qinzhou province in Zhongzhou state and was made of a special soil in the mountains, which was several times tougher than ordinary red bricks. When he came in, he smelled a kind of adhesive, and it was a military adhesive. It could be seen that the blue bricks in front of him were all held together with a super strong adhesive. According to his observation, a wall in the maze was at least 1 meter thick.
Bump into it?
In theory it was possible and so could he. If he hit it with all his strength he could. But the maze was so big, how many times could he hit it? He would die of exhaustion.
You're right. Just hit it.
Li Tianlan smiled brightly. The human emperor shook gently in his sleeve and fell into his hand. Li Tianlan raised one hand, and the human emperor stretched in the air. The wind and thunder roared, and it moved forward. The wall touched the tip of the spear, and sparks flew. The blue brick wall, which was 3 meters high and at least 1 meter thick, suddenly collapsed with a loud bang, and the bricks and stones flew everywhere. Li Tianlan looked calm and stepped forward. Smash everything, tear everything. The direction I'm moving forward is my way, my martial arts.
I won't retreat until I die.
Zhuang Huayang told him that if he believed in him, please give it a try.
Then I'll give it a try.
The human emperor streaked across the air, and the sound was surging with a loud bang. The second wall was smashed again when he raised his hand. Li Tianlan turned and disappeared.
What kind of chi-controlling realm is this? Isn't this bullying?
Li Beitian was stunned for a few seconds, and then he suddenly came to his senses and shouted in exasperation. He could also break the blue brick wall in front of him, but he needed to use all his strength. However, Li Tianlan, who was in the chi-controlling realm, broke the wall as easily as breaking glass, and hit it twice in a row without any effort. Li Beitian was already at the peak of the ice-condensing realm,
and he was at least one big realm ahead of Li Tianlan, who had just broken through to the Qi-controlling realm. But what about the big realm now? Was it lost? Or was it eaten by a dog? Holding Yu Qingyan's hand, Wang Yuetong quickly followed him without hesitation. When she passed by Li Beitian, she said calmly, "The two moves just now were all from senior brother Tianlan's own physical strength. His strength and speed are both perfect. If I'm not wrong, senior brother Tianlan should be born with divine strength and wind and thunder veins." Wind and thunder veins. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing were shocked at the same time. The so-called wind and thunder veins, one was the wind vein, and the other was the thunder vein, which was extremely rare. The internal structure of this kind of person was also different from that of most people. To be exact, there were two extra meridians that could spread from the arms to the legs and run through the limbs. The wind vein was born with great speed. The thunder vein was born with great strength. The gathering of wind and thunder was 1 in a billion, and it was even rarer than the experts of the invincible realm. Such a person was completely born for martial arts, and he had the capital to be invincible in the same realm and even kill the enemies of higher realms. Not to mention the wind and thunder veins, just the wind vein or the thunder vein alone was a top talent that all the forces would fight for. Those with the wind vein were born to be assassins, and those with the thunder vein were born to be valiant generals. Such a person was completely unique in martial arts. Was Li Tianlan really a super genius with the wind and thunder veins? Princess Yuetong. Li Beitian suddenly opened his mouth and called her in a deep voice. What's wrong? Wang Yuetong paused and turned to look at Li Beitian. Tianlan really has the wind and thunder veins? Li Beitian asked in a serious tone. If this question was confirmed, then he must report it to the people behind him. As long as a warrior with the wind and thunder veins grew up, he would be a proper expert of the invincible realm in the future. And he would be much stronger than the ordinary experts of the invincible realm. In the dark world, there were divine and holy lists that listed the experts of the invincible realm in the world. The divine list was ranked before the holy list, and even the last expert of the invincible realm on the divine list was stronger than the first on the holy list. This was enough to show that even the experts of the invincible realm had different levels. An expert of the invincible realm with the wind and thunder veins could at least be on the divine list. This was absolutely not a trivial matter. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered with a strange fiery look. She nodded and said, "Most likely." Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other, both looking excited. Wang Yuetong's answer to the question of whether Li Tianlan had the wind and thunder veins was absolutely authoritative. Because this siren of the Wang family herself was a genius with the wind vein, and she had a brother who also had the wind and thunder veins. Wang Shengxiao, 23 years old, half a step to the thunder-shocking realm. He ranked first among the top 10 young experts of Jianghu State, along with another talented young heavenly son. Boom! The sound of the blue wall collapsing rang out for the third time. "Hurry up, follow them," Ning Qianqing said, and they directly rushed in the direction of Li Tianlan. In front of them, Li Tianlan held the silver spear in his hand and walked steadily forward, without retreating or looking back. Forward. Raise the spear. Break the wall. The blue walls in front of Li Tianlan were broken one after another, but his movements were steady and coherent. 1 wall, 5 walls, 15 walls. Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian followed behind Li Tianlan. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan walked behind them. The 5 of them walked in the maze, smashing their way through in a crushing manner. Behind the 5 of them, more and more freshmen gathered behind the 5 of them. If it were you, how many walls could you break? Li Beitian glanced at Ning Qianqing and asked. 15? 20? That's almost the limit. What about you? Ning Qianqing smiled bitterly and glanced at Li Tianlan, who did not show any signs of fatigue after breaking 15 walls in a row. He could not tell what he was feeling. Was the legendary wind and thunder veins really so terrifying? Li Tianlan was already so powerful when he was in the Qi-controlling realm. If the young heavenly son of the Wang family who had wind and thunder veins and was about to enter the thunder-shocking realm made a move, how terrifying would it be? Me too. Li Beitian looked serious and said, "We are almost the same. After 20 walls, your willpower should not be able to keep up, but my physical strength can't keep up." Wang Yuetong followed them quietly, but she did not hear what they were talking about. Her clear eyes, which seemed to be able to reflect everything, were fixed on Li Tianlan's back from beginning to end, not wanting to leave him at all. In her sight, it was an ordinary figure, not tall or burly, but ordinary.
But at this moment, as he moved forward in this enclosed maze, it seemed that all the obstacles would be completely smashed into ashes under his silver spear.
Feng Feiyun walked, unstoppable. Only he moved forward between heaven and earth.
He was a man with an ordinary appearance and figure, but at this time, his every move exuded a kind of confidence and style that looked down on the world.
His charm was unparalleled. Every time he made a move, there was a myriad of phenomena, which could be called peerless. Wang Yuetong's eyes were blurred and she was intoxicated. The sound of the blue wall collapsing in front of them continued, and the whole maze seemed to be shaking violently. It was the 40th minute since they entered the maze. Chapter 18.
The further Li Tianlan went in the maze, the more certain he was that the maze he was in now was an imitation of the maze that had almost tortured him to madness in Beijiang.
This should be a simplified version of the maze in Beijiang. The entrance was exactly the same as the beginning section, and the scale was roughly the same.
But when he reached the middle section, Li Tianlan keenly discovered that the forks that were the easiest for people to get lost in had all disappeared and turned into a straight path. In this way, the complexity of the interior of the maze had suddenly become several times simpler.
Li Tianlan had stayed in the maze in Beijiang for nearly a year and a half. To exaggerate a little, in that maze, he could almost find the exit with his eyes closed. Now he was in this simplified version of the maze.
After removing the forks that were the easiest for people to take detours, every vein of the entire maze was extremely clear in his mind.
The 40th minute. 35 walls were broken. Although Li Tianlan still had strength to spare, he stopped breaking the walls. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing followed him all the way. Behind them were Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan. Now that Li Tianlan stopped, the other four stood directly in the passage and looked at each other. At this moment, the 35 consecutive blue walls behind him had been completely broken. The process did not take long, but every path in the maze was almost exactly the same. They turned left and right, forward and backward. Even Wang Yuetong, who knew the maze better than anyone else, could not tell where they were. The others were even more confused.
Tianlan.
Li Beitian waited for a while and looked at Li Tianlan, who was standing still, and subconsciously called him.
Let's go here.
Li Tianlan stood in the middle of the passage, pointed to his right and said slowly. Among the 5 people present, including the group of freshmen behind him, Li Tianlan was undoubtedly the only one who could determine his position.
So he was very sure that the exit of the maze would appear in front of everyone as soon as the blue wall in front of him was broken. But after calculating the time, he gave up this seemingly domineering but actually not smart enough approach.
The maze was diamond-shaped.
From the entrance, the further one went, the larger the space, which also meant that the chances of the freshmen meeting each other were smaller.
But once the second half was close to the exit, the further one went, the smaller the space became. In the end, there might only be a few crossings, so the chances of meeting other students were higher. The possibility of a fight was almost 100%. Li Tianlan never dared to underestimate other people's IQ.
Now it had been nearly 50 minutes since they entered the entrance, and the difficulty of the maze in front of them was not as complicated as he had imagined.
Those with better brains should be very close to the exit by now, either by luck or calculation. And the first batch of people to approach the exit would undoubtedly be the strongest among the freshmen.
What kind of scene would it be when a small portion of the strongest who had a competitive relationship and their own pride met together?
Although Li Tianlan didn't mind being high profile, he was not stupid. Zhuang Huayang had made it clear that the maneuver would last for 5 hours, through the maze and a forest. That was to say, the maze was only the first half of the maneuver. In the first maneuver after entering the school, if they could save the most combat power for the final sprint, no one would refuse it. If there were fewer battles at the exit, Li Tianlan would be very happy. He didn't mind being high profile, but what he cared about most were credits and results. As long as the results could satisfy him, the process was not important at all. So the path he chose at this time was not the closest to the exit, but the farthest. If they walked along this path, it would take at least 10 minutes to reach the exit if they were not in a hurry. The figures of the 5 people turned a corner in the maze and then disappeared. Behind them, a large number of freshmen who followed the 5 people looked at each other. After hesitating for a moment, they quickly dispersed. Some left in the opposite direction of Li Tianlan, some chose to continue walking with Li Tianlan, and some disappeared from other intersections.
In this maze, they had no idea where they were and could only make decisions based on intuition. Some of the people who continued to follow Li Tianlan undoubtedly had the most accurate intuition, but a little hesitation made them miss the opportunity again. When they followed Li Tianlan around the corner, Li Tianlan and the other 4 people were no longer in sight. What appeared in front of them were 3 identical, empty passages. Senior brother Tianlan has the wind and thunder veins. Congratulations! This is the fortune of Jianghu State. In time, I'm afraid there will be another invincible person in Jianghu State. Even now, senior brother Tianlan makes me look at you with new eyes. In the empty passage, Wang Yuetong directly passed Li Baitian and Ning Qianqing and walked beside Li Tianlan with a smile. She was very close to Li Tianlan, but she did not have any physical contact with his body, keeping an imperceptible bottom line. The two walked side by side. Wang Yuetong tilted her head and looked at Li Tianlan. Her limpid eyes were intoxicated with a trace of admiration and envy. It was hard to tell whether she was sincere or not. How can you be sure that I have wind and thunder veins, junior sister Yuetong? Li Tianlan glanced at her and asked with a gentle smile. Arrogance. Arrogance. At such a close distance, Wang Yuetong finally felt the other emotions under Li Tianlan's calmness and gentleness. It was a kind of pride that seemed to look down on all the women in the world. The casual glance just now made Wang Yuetong feel an obvious sense of frustration. A strange emotion gently rippled in her heart. Wang Yuetong bit her red lips, and then her smile became sweeter. She was the kind of enchanting stunner whose every frown and smile could charm a large number of men and even men. Now she deliberately befriended Li Tianlan. In her sweet smile, the whole passage seemed to be filled with a kind of youthful charm. Senior brother, are you testing me? I have the wind vein, so I am very sensitive to speed. Coincidentally, I have a brother who also has the wind and thunder veins. When he moves, he is exactly the same as senior brother. So I was sure at first sight. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and glanced at Wang Yuetong. Those who had the wind vein were born assassins. They were born with amazing speed and flexibility. If they did not die prematurely, they could at least reach the peak of the thunder-shocking realm and even have the chance to be invincible. Such a talent was indeed amazing. But what interested him more was her brother. In the dark world, those who had the wind or thunder veins were already rare, and those who had the wind and thunder veins were even rarer. They were said to be 1 in 100 years. Now that he had just arrived at the Sky Academy, he heard the news of another person with the wind and thunder veins, which suddenly made him feel that the wind and thunder veins were a little worthless. How old is your brother this year? What realm is he in? Wang Yuetong wrinkled her delicate little nose. The simple action suddenly made her look more playful. When she mentioned her brother, her smile became more brilliant and proud. Obviously, the relationship between the brother and sister was very good. 23 years old. He has now surpassed the peak of the fire-flaming realm and is about to enter the thunder-shocking realm. In the same realm, my brother has fought hundreds of times and has never been defeated. No one in the younger generation is his match. Li Tianlan's pupils contracted slightly. At the age of 23, a person who was half a step to the thunder-shocking realm with the wind and thunder veins would be the most dazzling genius in any era. If he could successfully graduate from the Sky Academy, achieve his goal and grow up, Wang Yuetong's brother would definitely be his strong rival in the future. I also admit that Wang Xianxia does have the capital to be invincible. But isn't it a little exaggerated to say that no one in the younger generation is his match? Li Baitian's somewhat sour voice sounded behind Li Tianlan. Wang Yuetong squinted her beautiful eyes and turned her head to look back. The originally youthful and enchanting peerless beauty suddenly had a kind of pride and majesty that people couldn't look at directly. What? You're not convinced? Do you think you're my brother's match? Why are you angry, Miss Yuetong? I'm just telling the truth. Of course, I'm no match for your brother. But if he's really invincible in the younger generation, why should he be ranked first among the top 10 young experts with another young heavenly son? Li Baitian seemed to be extremely scrupulous about Wang Yuetong and said with a wry smile. Humph, it's just a random ranking made by a bored person. My brother doesn't care about it. Gu Hanshan can be ranked with my brother because he didn't provoke my brother. Otherwise, he would have been beaten into a pig's head. Wang Yuetong looked proud. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Li Tianlan calmly changed the topic and said with a smile. Everyone, I've been hearing you talk about the top 10 young experts, but I've never heard of this list before. Can anyone introduce it to me? Qingyan, go ahead.
Wang Yuetong pulled Yu Qingyan over and said. In front of them was a group of 5. Whether Li Tianlan knew it or not, it was a fact that 3 of them were on the list of the top 10 young experts. As far as Yu Qingyan was concerned, her position was completely neutral, lest some shameless people would raise their status. In Wang Yuetong's opinion, in Wang Yuetong's view, Li Beitian was very suspicious. It's just hearsay. There are many things that can't be confirmed. Yu Qingyan's pretty face blushed. She was really too shy. Her big eyes blinked, and she looked a little flustered under the attention of several people. It's okay. Just tell us what you heard. Wang Yuetong touched Yu Qingyan's hair and said with a smile. Yeah, I'm just asking casually. I just want to see who the top young talents of Jianghu State are. Li Tianlan smiled and nodded to Yu Qingyan. Yu Qingyan blushed again. She followed Li Tianlan and whispered, the top 10 experts of the young generation are mainly ranked for experts under the age of 25. They are ranked every year. Although they are not very authoritative, most people believe in them. Li Tianlan nodded. 25 years old was very interesting. Because in martial arts, 25 years old was a threshold. Whether one could cross the ice-condensing realm and enter the fire-flaming realm at this age or not would largely determine one's future achievements. Of course, there were many late bloomers in any period, but such examples were too few to be representative at all. The first one is Wang Xianxia, the heir of the Wang family. He has wind and thunder veins and is almost invincible in the same realm. At the age of 23, he is already an expert half a step to the thunder-shocking realm. And the one who ranks first with Wang Xianxia is Gu Hanzhan, the young master of Kunlun City. He has the heavenly king heart, and his realm is roughly the same as Wang Xianxiao's. His combat capability should also be roughly the same. When Yu Qingyan said this, she secretly glanced at Wang Yuetong, for fear that Sister Yuetong would be angry. But Wang Yuetong looked calm and didn't seem to be dissatisfied at all. Kunlun City? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and said in a doubtful tone, but with a trace of coldness that even he himself didn't notice. Kunlun, surnamed Gu Yunxia. At this moment, some kind of inspiration seemed to explode in Li Tianlan's mind, and his mood was indescribably complicated. Yes, Kunlun City is now the power center of the special warfare system of Jianghu State. There are currently 4 invincible realm experts in Jianghu State, and 2 of them are in Kunlun City. Yu Qingyan said obediently. 2 invincible realm experts? Both surnamed Gu? The coldness in Li Tianlan's eyes flashed away. He twitched the corner of his mouth and asked in a stiff tone. The power center of the special warfare system, Kunlun City. Li Tianlan was a little annoyed and self-deprecating. Many years ago, Jianghu State didn't have the name Kunlun City at all. Even if it did, it was not the power center of the special warfare system of Jianghu State. At that time, there was only one core of the entire special warfare system of Jianghu State, and that was the Li family. The Li family of Kunlun that belonged to him. Was there a reason for this that was worth pondering? You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.